Chapter 342. Yun Zhanfei, a one-star enlightened being, was the cousin of the Flying Cloud sect's leader, Yun Zhanfei. 30 years ago, Yun Zhanfei had broken through to the astral realm and became an enlightened being. He left the Green Cloud region to explore the true Shen domain and returned a few years later. During this period of time, Yun Zhanfei's greatest gain was the middle-grade air transportation spiritual weapon he had found in an ancient ruin. Of course, this middle-tier flying spiritual tool was not discovered by Yun Zhanfei alone. It was discovered by his two one-star enlightened being friends. After discovering this middle-grade flying spirit tool, Yun Zhanfei decisively launched a sneak attack. He killed his two friends and obtained this middle-grade flying spirit tool alone. After that, he returned to the Flying Cloud sect and rarely left the sect since then. After returning to the Flying Cloud sect, Yun Zhanfei rarely used the middle-tier flying spiritual tool. At least, he never used it when there were other people around. Even the Flying Cloud sect's enlightened being did not know that he had a middle-tier flying spiritual tool. If it was not for Yi Xing's heaven-defying potential, Yun Zhanfei would not have exposed that he had a middle-tier flying spiritual tool. However, he had to kill Yi Xing no matter what. Moreover, Yi Xing had a flying spiritual weapon that was at least of high grade. Killing Yi Xing would not only prevent future troubles, but he could also obtain a rare treasure. Of course, Yun Zhanfei had to kill Yi Xing even if he had to expose his medium-grade flying spiritual weapon. Yun Zhanfei made up his mind. After killing Yi Xing, he would not return to the Flying Cloud sect but leave the Green Cloud region. Otherwise, he would not be able to keep the high-tier flying spiritual tool and the Flying Cloud sect would not be able to keep it. It would definitely be taken away by the Sun Moon sect. After leaving the Green Cloud region, he could go to the 9 great sects to trade. Even the 9 great sects' esteemed beings rarely had a high-tier flying spiritual tool. He could use the high-tier flying spiritual tool to trade for other treasures. For example, treasures that could increase his cultivation. Treasures that could increase an enlightened being's cultivation were definitely priceless. However, the value of a high-tier flying spiritual tool was no less than a supreme-tier spiritual tool. It was enough to trade for treasures that could increase an enlightened being's cultivation. Although a high-grade air transportation spiritual artifact was fast, it also consumed a lot of energy. How long could an 8-star martial saint last? Yun Zhanfei had a smile on his face. He was extremely happy in his heart. His gaze locked onto Yi Xing, who was flying at high speed in the distance. He circulated his astral energy and flapped his wings continuously, increasing his speed to the limit as he chased after Yi Xing. Yi Xing, you must escape. You must. Lu Tianyuan prayed silently in his heart. Suddenly his hair stood on end. He looked over at Qizhua, who was several kilometers away, and saw that Qizhua had knocked another arrow on his high-grade spirit bow and had locked onto him. Qizhua was furious that Yi Xing had escaped from Qizhua's hands. Although he had not attacked the perfected persons of the Falling Star sect due to his status, he was now venting his anger on them. Yi Xing knew that an enlightened master was chasing after him from behind. Pushing the celestial essence within his body to the limit, he desperately flapped his blue cloud wings and flew away at top speed. In the blink of an eye, he had flown a few kilometers. In another blink of an eye, he had flown 10 kilometers. In about 20 breaths, he had flown 100 kilometers away. As a top-grade air transportation spiritual artifact, the blue cloud wing speed was indeed extraordinary. Even though Yi Xing's current cultivation was far from being able to display the true speed of the blue cloud wings, his speed was still faster than Yun Zhanfei, a one-star enlightened master, who was flying with a middle-grade air transportation spiritual artifact. This caused Yun Zhanfei, who was chasing after Yi Xing, to be extremely surprised. This was because even though he was flying at top speed, the distance between him and Yi Xing was still increasing. How is this possible? An 8-star martial saint, even if he is flying with a high-grade air transportation spiritual artifact, can't be faster than me. Yun Zhanfei was deeply shocked. His eyes were filled with confusion. For a moment, he did not think that it was a top-grade air transportation spiritual artifact. He really did not dare to imagine that an 8-star martial saint would have a top-grade air transportation spiritual artifact. After 200 breaths, the two of them had flown for more than 1,000 kilometers. The distance between them had increased from the initial 10 kilometers to dozens of kilometers. Damn it! Damn it! Yun Zhanfei cursed as he chased after Su Mo. He was almost burning his astral energy as he flew, but he still could not shorten the distance between them. Suddenly, Yun Zhanfei's heart jolted and he was shocked. Could this lad's air transportation spiritual artifact be a top-grade air transportation spiritual artifact? Yun Zhanfei did not dare to think about it before. Now that he thought about it, he immediately reacted. Perhaps this was the only reason why Yi Xing's speed was so fast. If it is a top-grade air transportation spiritual artifact, this is a real peerless treasure. It is comparable to the legendary dark weapon that only the honorable martial artists are qualified to own. When Yun Zhanfei thought of this, his heart immediately became excited, and his heart thumped. If I can obtain a supreme-grade flying spiritual weapon and sell it, won't I become one of the richest perfected persons in the true Xian region? At that time, what kind of treasures can I buy? Yun Zhanfei became even more excited. The only pity was that the speed of the top-grade air transportation spiritual artifact was too fast. Even in the hands of an 8-star martial saint, Yi Xing's flying speed was faster than Yun Zhanfei's middle-grade air transportation spiritual artifact. The distance between them was already dozens of miles. Although the view in the sky was wide and it was very difficult for Yi Xing to rely on obstacles to block Yun Zhanfei's vision to escape, if the distance between them was further, no matter how high they flew, there would still be many blind spots. Yi Xing could really use the obstacles in the mountains, valleys, and forests to escape from Yun Zhankong's pursuit. Yun Zhanfei was excited and anxious at the same time. He was afraid that Yi Xing would escape from under his nose. Compared to Yun Zhanfei, Yi Xing was even more anxious. As a top-grade air transportation spiritual artifact, the clear sky wings were fast enough. However, Yi Xing's cultivation was too low and he could not unleash the true speed of the clear sky wings. Moreover, Yi Xing's consumption of his celestial essence was too great. If he continued to fly like this, he was afraid that it would not be long before Yun Zhankong caught up with him and he would die of exhaustion due to the exhaustion of his celestial essence. In order to last longer, Yi Xing had to adjust the circulation of celestial essence in his body to reduce the consumption of his celestial essence. However, his flying speed also decreased. Behind Yi Xing, Yun Zhanfei's eyes suddenly brightened. A sage's sense of distance was extremely sensitive. When Yi Xing's speed slowed down, he immediately felt it. The distance between the two of them did not continue to increase. Instead, it was gradually decreasing. This kid finally can't hold on anymore. A mere 8-star martial saint wants to keep driving the top-grade air transportation spiritual artifact. It's simply wishful thinking. Today, I have a big harvest. Yun Zhanfei was overjoyed. Yi Xing controlled the consumption of his celestial essence within a bearable range, but his speed was still slower than Yun Zhanfei's. The distance between the two gradually decreased. When the distance between the two reached its initial length, they had already flown more than 2,000 miles. Yi Xing suddenly changed his direction. He no longer continued to fly forward, but fell down. Like a meteor falling, Yi Xing quickly landed on a mountain peak. In the end, he couldn't escape. He might as well fight with the enemy while he still had the strength. Otherwise, if he kept flying, his strength would be greatly consumed, and he couldn't get rid of the enemy. In the end, he could only quickly capture the enemy. Whoosh! A starlight rushed out from Yi Xing's glabella, turning into a huge flaming star suspended in the air. Yi Xing's eyes were firm. At this moment, there was nothing to say. No matter what method he used, he had to kill the enemy. Even if he had to expose all his trump cards, he would not stop. If he couldn't kill the enemy, there would only be one result, and that was his death. If he was going to lose his life, he naturally had to use all his trump cards. Everything would be to kill the enemy. Of course, he had to use his trump cards at the right time. He couldn't expose them all at the beginning. Although Yi Xing had broken through to the 8-star martial saint realm, His strength had increased a lot compared to when he was a 7-star martial saint. He didn't care about any half-step enlightened masters. However, a Star Dipper enlightened master was far from a half-step enlightened master. Even a 1-star enlightened master was a strong threat to his life. When dealing with an enemy who was far stronger than him, he couldn't erupt his strength to the limit at the beginning. He had to first paralyze the enemy and then find an opportunity to deal a fatal blow. Yi Xing instantly took out the purple firmament bow and purple gold arrow. He used the Azure Dragon arrow style and shot an arrow at Yun Zhanfei, who was rushing toward him. Chapter 343. The arrow pierced through the air. It turned into a huge azure dragon and roared as it charged toward Yun Zhanfei. This arrow contained the power of the fire astral form, the power of the celestial origin, and the power of the heart of archery. Coupled with the greater mastery of the Azure Dragon arrow style, its power was terrifying. Even without using the Sagittarius constellation, it was more than enough to kill a half-step perfected person. The arrow pierced through the air and shot out a few miles in the blink of an eye. It collided with Yun Zhanfei, who was flying toward it. However, this arrow did not hurt Yun Zhanfei at all. Yun Zhanfei circulated his astral energy and stretched out his hand to grab the arrow that was flying toward him. His hand was like an iron clamp. The purple gold arrow was caught in his hand. The tail of the arrow was shaking, but it could not move forward anymore. A perfected person in the astral realm would have converted all of their celestial origin into astral energy. A half-step perfected person would only have 50% astral energy. There was a huge difference between 50% astral energy and 100% astral energy. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. This arrow was enough to kill a half-step perfected person, but it was caught by Yun Zhanfei easily. If a martial saint was someone who had just stepped onto the path of martial arts, then a perfected person would be an expert in the path of martial arts. There was a huge gap between a martial saint and a perfected person. It was like the gap between a martial saint and an ordinary martial artist. Moreover, a martial saint was afraid of being surrounded by ordinary martial artists. A 1-star martial saint had a high chance of dying when surrounded by a large number of ordinary martial artists. A perfected person was a high-end combat power. A martial artist could not win with numbers. Even if 109-star martial saints worked together, they would not be a match for a 1-star perfected person. In front of a 1-star perfected person, even a half-step perfected person would not be able to withstand a single blow. It did not matter if there were 10 of them or dozens of them. If he wanted to kill them, it would be like chopping vegetables. Your archery skills are not bad. You can kill a half-step perfected person. Unfortunately, you cannot withstand a single blow from a real perfected person. Yun Zhanfei snorted and threw the arrow away. Then, he pressed his palm down from the sky toward Yi Xing. Die, kid. The arrow was instantly thrown several hundred meters away by Yun Zhanfei. Yi Xing did not pay attention to the arrow that Yun Zhanfei threw out. Instead, he focused on the palm strike that came from the sky. The speed of Yun Zhanfei's descent from the sky was already fast enough, but the astral light from the palm strike was even faster. The surging celestial essence condensed into a palm-shaped astral light, which instantly grew in size until it was more than 10 feet tall and several feet wide. It was like a boulder the size of a house. Under the pressure of the palm, the airflow in the air started to distort. The airflow splashed in all directions, and the wind blades were as sharp as knives. One could see how terrifying the power of this palm was. What was even faster than the energy palm was the wind generated by the palm strike. While the palm strike was still in the air, the ground was already stirred up by the wind. Sand and pebbles were sent flying. Yi Xing felt as though an invisible mountain was pressing down on him. Heavenly Bat Steps. Yi Xing used the wind force of the minute subtlety realm and executed the Heavenly Bat Steps. He took a step forward and his body turned into a stream of light, disappearing in a flash. With the Heavenly Bat Steps at the Perfection realm and the wind force of the minute subtlety realm, it was extremely fast. It was as if he had teleported. In terms of speed, Yi Xing was not inferior to a perfected being of the astral realm. Bang! Yun Zhanfei's palm strike missed and hit the ground where Yixing had just stood. A loud explosion rang out, causing the earth to shake. The ground was instantly shattered. The ground where the palm strike hit caved in, forming a deep palm print that was the same size as the palm strike. The mud and stones turned into dust under this palm strike. If Yixing had been hit, even if his body was stronger than any martial saint, he would have been seriously injured. Any martial saint would have been smashed into meat paste under this palm strike, regardless of whether it was one or several of them. Yixing stood a few hundred meters away with a look of horror in his eyes. Even though he had dodged the attack, he still felt a lingering fear from the power of the attack. The attacking power of a perfected being was terrifying. Yixing was no match for him in a head-on confrontation. Yun Zhanfei landed on the ground and stood beside the palm print. His gaze was like a sword as it shot toward Yixing. His aura locked onto Yixing. Although he had not made a move yet, Yixing already felt as if his body was being cut by a sharp blade. Yixing's body was so strong that ordinary weapons could not penetrate it. However, Yun Zhanfei's gaze was stronger than any weapon, causing Yixing to feel threatened. Yun Zhanfei looked excited, but his gaze was filled with disdain. He said, "Your speed has surprised me. It is even faster than many perfected beings. Unfortunately, it is still not enough for me." As he spoke, Yun Zhanfei raised his hand and a dazzling sword appeared in his hand. It was a top-notch middle spiritual weapon. No wonder Yun Zhanfei's gaze was so sharp. It turned out that he was a swordsman. With the spiritual weapon in his hand, Yun Zhanfei's aura surged. He was like a sword. Just his terrifying aura alone was enough to cut the surrounding air into pieces. "Die!" Yun Zhanfei shouted. In an instant, his entire body was like a flash of sword radiance as he charged toward Yixing. It was the sword step. Young Master Tian Luo's sword aura was strong enough and his sword step was fast enough. However, compared to Yun Zhanfei, he was still a few levels behind. Sword radiance flashed. To Yun Zhanfei, the distance of a few hundred meters was nothing. With a swing of his sword, a sword aura rose like the rising sun. It was unstoppable and it was about to hit Yixing fast. Too fast. Yixing did not even have time to dodge. He could only use the flame aura fist and punch out. Under the cover of the flame astral phenomenon, Yixing's flame astral energy surged and formed a flame aura fist in an instant. Although Yixing was not a perfected being, his attack was the same as a perfected being. It was Gang Qi and not Qi radiance. However, Yixing's fist aura could not be compared to the sword aura of Yun Zhanfei, a one-star perfected being. With a swoosh, the fist aura was cut in half by the sword aura. In the blink of an eye, the fist aura dissipated and turned into air currents that splashed to both sides. However, the sword aura did not lose its momentum and it hit Yixing's fist hard. They were both using the Sword of the Rising Sun from the middle stage changing sword technique. However, Yun Zhanfei was much more powerful than Yun Feng in terms of sword techniques and cultivation. Sparks flew everywhere. Instantly, Yixing spat out a mouthful of blood. Like a cannonball, his body shot backward and landed 100 meters away. Fortunately, he wore the burning flame gloves and blocked the sharpness of the sword aura. Otherwise, wherever the sword aura passed, not only his fist, but also Yixing's entire arm would have been cut in half. Upper stage spiritual weapon gloves. Yun Zhanfei's eyes lit up and he looked even more excited. As a one-star perfected being, the most precious item he had was a middle stage flying spiritual weapon. Its value was on par with an upper stage spiritual weapon. However, he did not have a real upper stage spiritual weapon. However, Yixing, an 8-star martial saint, had first revealed that he had a supreme flying spiritual weapon. Now, he had revealed that he had an upper stage spiritual weapon gloves. This had made Yun Zhanfei surprised and happy. He had treated Yixing as a huge treasure vault. Kill this kid and all his treasures will be mine. All mine. Ha! Yun Zhanfei could not help but laugh wildly. His aura surged and his sword aura pierced the sky. However, at this moment, the heavens and the earth suddenly darkened. Everywhere was shrouded in darkness and one could not even see their own fingers. Yi Xing had used the black hole astrology. Both he and Yun Zhanfei were shrouded in darkness, and they had entered the dark world created by the black hole astrology. Yun Zhanfei was shocked and he stopped laughing. In an instant he put up a defensive sword aura and raised his spirits. He looked around and realized that he could not see anything. There was only darkness. However, when he looked at the sky, he saw a huge black hole maelstrom spinning slowly in the sky. The black hole maelstrom was huge and its center was as black as ink. It was daunting and seemed to lead to another world. What is going on? Why did the sky suddenly turn dark? It should still be early before the sky turns dark. Yun Zhanfei was bewildered. He looked at the black hole maelstrom in the sky and a thought flashed through his mind. He was even more shocked. Could this be that kid's astrology? However, he has the flame astrology. How can he have two astrology? Yun Zhanfei quickly found the flame astrology beside the black hole maelstrom. It was also high in the sky but was pushed to the corner by the black hole maelstrom. Therefore, it did not look eye-catching. When Yun Zhanfei saw the flame astrology, he was finally sure that the black hole maelstrom was Yi Xing's astrology. Chapter 344. Yun Zhanfei's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly recalled the time 9 months ago when the sun was shining brightly but the sky suddenly turned dark. The feeling back then was exactly the same as it was now. Could it be that the sky turned dark back then was also caused by Yi Xing's astrology? Yun Zhanfei was extremely shocked. At that time, he was in the Flying Cloud sect, which was tens of thousands of miles away from the Falling Star sect. How could Yi Xing's astrology cause the sky to turn dark from tens of thousands of miles away? Moreover, Yun Zhanfei was not the only one who felt the sky turning dark back then. The other martial artists in the Flying Cloud sect also felt it. Yun Zhanfei immediately raised his guard. Yi Xing's black hole astrology made him feel terrified and alarmed. Whoosh! A ray of starlight shot out from between Yun Zhanfei's eyebrows and turned into a golden star that floated in the sky. The golden star shone brightly and tore apart the darkness around Yun Zhanfei, causing everything within a 100-meter radius to be covered in golden light. As an astral realm enlightened being, Yun Zhanfei had an absolute advantage over Yi Xing in terms of cultivation. Therefore, his astrology could break apart the world of darkness created by the black hole astrology. However, Yun Zhanfei's suppression of Yi Xing's cultivation was limited. The golden star could not break apart the world of darkness completely. It could only illuminate the area within a 100-meter radius. For Yun Zhanfei, being able to see the area within a 100-meter radius was already enough. It was much better than being blinded by darkness. As soon as Yun Zhanfei's golden star tore apart the darkness, Yi Xing took out the purple firmament bow and shot out an arrow. Whoosh! The arrow pierced through the air. A few 100 meters was not a distance at all. As soon as it left the bow, it was already in front of Yun Zhanfei, aiming straight for his throat. Hee. Yun Zhanfei sneered and waved his spiritual weapon. A ray of sword energy flashed and knocked the arrow away. He said disdainfully, "Weak archery." Whoosh! As he spoke, Yun Zhanfei swung his sword. A sword light instantly broke through the air currents and shot towards Yi Xing. Even though Yun Zhanfei's range of vision was limited and he couldn't see Yi Xing's exact location, as a real person, Yun Zhanfei's senses were extremely sharp. The moment Yi Xing shot the arrow, Yun Zhanfei was able to determine Yi Xing's location. At the same time, Yun Zhanfei also used his sword steps. His entire body was like a shining sharp blade. In a flash, he appeared where Yi Xing was standing just now. The sword energy sliced through the void, and the golden stars shone in all directions. Yun Zhanfei's counterattack was extremely fierce. With his strength, even if his opponent was also a 1-star enlightened master, he could easily crush most of them. As a sword Dao expert, Yun Zhanfei's strength was definitely top-notch among 1-star enlightened masters. However, Yun Zhanfei's lightning-fast counterattack missed. Not only did Yi Xing circulate the Heavenly Bat Steps technique at the consummate level, he also used the Azure Cloud Wings, causing his speed to reach an astonishing level. In an instant, he had retreated several miles away. Whoosh! Another ray of starlight shot out from between Yi Xing's eyebrows. It turned into a giant starlight bow in the sky. Yi Xing used the Sagittarius constellation and finally revealed his trump card. He was going to shoot his strongest arrow at Yun Zhanfei. The grand momentum of wind, fire, and darkness. Yi Xing used the three grand forces of heaven and earth and merged them into the arrow. At the same time, there was also the terrifying Sagittarius constellation's star power and the power of his archery attainment. It made the arrow's power even more terrifying. Yi Xing's current archery attainment was almost catching up with his master, Zi Shanhou. Moreover, he had the Sagittarius constellation, so the arrow he shot was only stronger than Zi Shanhou's. Just like how Zi Shanhou killed the Dong Fuzong Enlightened Master, Yi Xing also circulated the azure cloud eyes when he shot the arrow. Instantly, two clouds whirlpools appeared in his eyes. Zi Shanhou's azure cloud eyes only cultivated the upper part of the azure cloud eyes. On the other hand, Yi Xing's azure cloud eyes was a complete extreme grade spiritual martial art. Other than the azure cloud eyes, he also cultivated the cloud eyes. Naturally, Yi Xing's azure cloud eyes had a greater effect on the target's thinking. In terms of archery power and eye technique, Yi Xing had already surpassed his master, Zi Shanhou. If Yi Xing's opponent was Watanabe, his arrow would definitely kill him. However, Yi Xing's opponent was not Watanabe. They were both one-star enlightened masters. Yun Zhanfei was an expert in the sword Dao and his strength was at the top level. On the other hand, Watanabe was only an ordinary one-star martial saint. Their strengths were not at the same level. Just as the clouds whirlpools appeared in Yun Zhanfei's eyes, two rays of sword light suddenly flashed and his eyes instantly became clear again. A powerful swordsman had a heart as firm as a mountain. He had an unshakable will and his mind was unshakable. Unless Yi Xing's strength was able to completely suppress Yun Zhanfei, he would not be able to use his azure cloud eyes to suppress Yun Zhanfei's will. However, it was obviously impossible now. Yun Zhanfei had already blocked two of Yi Xing's arrows. He did not think highly of Yi Xing's archery skills. During the battle, he did not notice that in the sky, another Sagittarius constellation had appeared beside the Black Hole constellation. Facing Yi Xing's arrow, Yun Zhanfei revealed a disdainful smile. He did not dodge or even retreat. Instead, he moved forward and waved the spiritual weapon in his hand to meet the arrow. Useless. Yun Zhanfei's voice was filled with disdain. He originally wanted to say, useless archery skills. However, he had obviously underestimated the power of the arrow. Before he could finish his words, a crisp sound rang out. The spiritual weapon was instantly deflected and the spiritual weapon was instantly deflected. However, the power of the arrow was still extremely terrifying. It continued to shoot towards Yun Zhanfei's throat. Yun Zhanfei's expression changed drastically. His hair stood on end and he felt a chill on his back. If the arrow pierced through his throat, Yun Zhanfei would definitely die. Ah! Yun Zhanfei let out a loud roar. It was not a scream that came from being shot by the arrow. At this moment, his essence, qi, and spirit merged as one. The star energy in his body burned and the middle-grade flying spiritual weapon flapped on his back. In an instant, his speed had reached its limit. With a loud roar, Yun Zhanfei's body turned into a shadow. In an instant he had dashed a few miles away. The arrow had hit his neck. However, it only hit the edge of his neck and caused a line of blood. It did not hit the vital part of his throat. At this moment, Yun Zhanfei's burst of speed was extremely fast. He managed to dodge this sure-kill arrow. However, he was not out of danger yet. With a thought, Yi Xing changed the direction of the arrow and continued to shoot towards Yun Zhanfei. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Yun Zhanfei's gangqi was extremely thick. When he felt the sharp aura behind him, he knew that the danger was still there. In an instant, he changed the direction of the arrow 3 times. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The arrow moved according to the thought. Yi Xing's arrow also changed 3 times in the air. Yun Zhanfei had used up all his gangqi, but he was still unable to dodge the attack of the arrow. In the blink of an eye, the arrow had caught up with Yun Zhanfei's body and shot into his back. 3 changes according to the thought. Yi Xing's state of mind had been upgraded. His mental strength had increased and he had reached the same level as his master, Zi Shanhou. Moreover, this was only the initial upgrade. With the addition of Yi Xing's Taoist connotation, there were still many comprehensions that he had not digested yet. If he was given a period of time, he would only need 10 days to half a month to digest all the comprehensions and use them for his own use. Regardless of whether it was his martial arts attainment or the level of his mental strength, there would be more improvements. The arrow contained an extremely terrifying force. After it had shot into Yun Zhanfei's body, it exploded instantly. The terrifying force was almost like a cannonball exploding. If a martial sage had been hit by Yi Xing's arrow, his body would have definitely been torn apart by the force contained in the arrow. Although a perfected person's physical body was not much stronger than a martial sage's, the quality of the astral energy in his body was extremely high. When the astral energy was locked, it would be tougher than an ordinary spiritual weapon. When the terrifying force exploded in Yun Zhanfei's body, it did not explode him into pieces. Instead, it had firmly pierced into his back. Of course, the terrifying force contained in the arrow had caused great damage to Yun Zhanfei. Although his body was protected by the astral energy, the place where the arrow had hit had his internal organs shattered and his meridians severed. The place where the arrow had hit was not far away from his heart. Due to the impact of the arrow, his heart had also been damaged. This was almost a fatal injury. Yun Zhanfei spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as ash. Yun Zhanfei raised his head and saw the Sagittarius constellation in the sky. His eyes were filled with unwillingness as he said, "So you still have a trick up your sleeve. You are actually a monster who possesses 3 types of astral energy. I hate you. I hate you. Will my monthly votes exceed 100 today? I'm looking forward to it." Chapter 345. With Yun Zhanfei's strength, if he had not underestimated Yi Xing and had gone all out, he would have had an 80 to 90% chance of blocking that arrow. The arrow just now was Yi Xing's strongest attack. If it had been blocked by Yun Zhanfei, Yi Xing would have had no chance to turn the situation around. He would most likely have lost this battle. This was not a duel in a grand competition. This was a battle of life and death. Losing meant death. Yun Zhanfei was severely injured after being hit by the arrow. His body was in excruciating pain and he could not circulate the astral energy in many parts of his body. His strength had been reduced by half. The outcome of this battle had been decided. Yun Zhanfei would definitely die. As a perfected 1-star cultivator, Yun Zhanfei should have been the winner of this battle of life and death. However, because he had underestimated Yi Xing, he had sent himself to the path of death. Yun Zhanfei's heart was filled with unwillingness. Yi Xing drew his bow again and shouted coldly, "Go to hell." Swoosh, the arrow left the bowstring and the dragon roared. It was the Azure Dragon arrow style again. Yun Zhanfei had unleashed his strength to the limit. "Let's die together." Yun Zhanfei knew that he was going to die. He immediately burned all the astral energy in his body. He was overdrawing his life force to increase his strength. Swoosh, a ray of sword light pierced through the void. Yun Zhanfei's entire body was shining brightly. He faced the arrow and rushed toward Yi Xing. With a clink, the sword energy and the arrow collided. The Azure Dragon's shadow dissipated. The purple-gold arrow turned into a ray of cold light and shot into the distance. Yun Zhanfei was burning his astral energy and life force to increase his strength. Not only did it make up for the loss of strength due to his severe injuries, but it also made his strength stronger than usual. When a perfected one went all out, it was extremely terrifying. This was especially true for Yun Zhanfei, who was one of the top perfected ones in the same realm. At this moment, Yun Zhanfei could defeat anyone in the same realm. Even a perfected 1-star cultivator would have to avoid him. The azure cloud wings flapped and Yi Xing retreated explosively. At this moment, Yun Zhanfei's perception had reached an unheard of level. He could sense the airflow and sound that Yi Xing created as he moved through the void. Even if he couldn't see Yi Xing, he could still lock onto Yi Xing's body. At this moment, both Yun Zhanfei's strength and speed had increased by a level after burning his life force. The distance between him and Yi Xing was rapidly closing. The scorching sun in the sky. Yun Zhanfei was bleeding from his 7 orifices, but he had a crazed expression on his face. The spirit artifact sword in his hand shone even more resplendently. It was like a scorching sun, making it hard for people to look at it directly. In an instant, he caught up to Yi Xing and thrust his sword at him. The golden constellation in the sky poured down an endless amount of astral power, which was absorbed by Yun Zhanfei's sword. This was the strongest sword strike of his sublimated life force. After this sword strike, whether his target lived or died, Yun Zhanfei would die. This sort of terrifying attack that erupted without regard for one's life was the most terrifying. Even someone with similar strength might perish together with it. As he drew back, Yi Xing put away his bow and took out the high-grade spirit artifact, the Black Dragon Spear. If Yun Zhanfei were still conscious, he would be shocked once more. Yi Xing actually had 2 high-grade spirit artifacts on him. However, Yun Zhanfei had already gone mad and his mind was no longer clear. There was only a single thought in his mind, and that was to kill Yi Xing and perish together with him. As for the Black Dragon Spear in Yi Xing's hand, he completely ignored it. Darkness Spear Curtain. With the Black Dragon Spear in hand, Yi Xing focused his mind like never before. His might erupted to the limit as he used a defensive spear move. The Black Dragon Spear danced about, turning into a curtain of spears that collided with Yun Zhanfei's sword. Bang! With a loud explosion, the Darkness Spear Curtain was instantly torn apart. With a puff, Yi Xing spat out a mouthful of blood. Yun Zhanfei's spirit artifact continued to erupt with a dazzling light as it thrust forwards. However, Yi Xing's figure was nowhere to be seen. Yi Xing had already clearly scanned this sword's trajectory, weakness, and flaws. As he used the Darkness Spear Curtain to resist, he had already dodged to a safe area. Yi Xing's speed erupted with incredible speed. Although Yun Zhanfei's mutual destruction sword strike had wounded Yi Xing, it hadn't caused any fatal injuries to Yi Xing. Whoosh! Yi Xing's blue cloud wings flapped. In the blink of an eye, he had crossed several miles. Yun Zhanfei's sword missed. With a loud roar, he slashed out with his sword again, chasing after Yi Xing. However, just as this sword thrust out, he spat out a mouthful of blood. He could no longer withstand the burning astral energy within his body, causing his life to rapidly fade away. Bang! The burning astral energy within Yun Zhanfei's body went out of control and exploded, causing his body to explode into pieces. The sword light instantly disappeared. With a clank, the spirit artifact sword was thrown forward and fell to the ground. A few miles away, Yi Xing stopped. He retracted his astrology and slapped his chest. A mouthful of blood spurted out. His body went limp and he sat on the ground, panting heavily. This battle was extremely dangerous for Yi Xing. If Yun Zhanfei hadn't looked down on him, an 8-star martial saint, and hadn't used his full strength during the battle with Yi Xing's arrow might not have been able to injure him. The result could have been reversed. The one who died might have been Yi Xing. Moreover, if Yun Zhanfei wasn't just a 1-star martial saint, if he was a 2-star martial saint, Yi Xing would have died in this battle. Luckily, the one who chased after me wasn't a 2-star martial saint. Luckily, Yun Zhanfei was conceited and looked down on me. Yi Xing rejoiced in his heart. After taking a healing elixir, Yi Xing immediately took out 2 low-grade star crystals to heal his injuries and restore his celestial essence. Yi Xing's injuries weren't serious and he recovered quickly. However, his celestial essence recovery was slower. It would take him at least half an hour to fully recover. He didn't dare to stay here for half an hour. The other party had a Class 3 flying demonic beast, and it wouldn't take long for it to catch up. After Yi Xing recovered from his injuries, he got up and walked towards Yun Zhanfei's corpse. Middle grade spirit artifact sword. Middle grade flying spirit artifact. Yi Xing picked up all of them, including Yun Zhanfei's storage ring. The first thing Yi Xing did was to refine Yun Zhanfei's middle grade flying spirit artifact. The owner of the middle grade flying spirit artifact was dead, so refining it wasn't difficult. After about 20 breaths, Yixing refined the middle-grade flying spirit artifact and put it into his body. His celestial essence surged, and a pair of black wings appeared on Yixing's back in an instant. Very good. The Clear Sky Wings is a top-grade flying spirit artifact, but it consumes too much energy for me. I can't fly for a long time, so I can only use it when escaping. This middle-grade flying spirit artifact is just right for me. I'll give it a name, Black Feather Wings. The Clear Sky Wings is too precious. If exposed, even the masters of the 9 great sects would covet it. I can't let others know about it. It's better to use the Black Feather Wings at ordinary times. Yixing secretly said in his heart. Yixing used his star fire to burn Yun Zhanfei's corpse to ashes. He then tore his blood-stained clothes and threw them on the ground, pretending that he was dead. Then he took out a set of clothes from his storage ring and put them on. With a flap of the Black Feather Wings, he instantly soared into the sky. Shortly after Yixing left, the 4-winged flying snake arrived with Chizhua, Tan Watanabe, and the other enlightened masters. There should have been 12 of them. Excluding Yun Zhanfei, who was chasing after Yixing, there were still 11 of them. However, there were only 9 of them on the 4-winged flying snake and 2 enlightened masters were missing. When enlightened masters fought with their lives on the line, they could unleash extraordinary combat strength by burning their astral energies and overdrafting their life force. Even though Tan Watanabe had more enlightened masters on his side and was stronger, they had to pay a huge price to kill the 5 enlightened masters of the Falling Star sect. Lu Tianyuan and Qi Doxing had dragged an enlightened master of the Dongfu sect down with them before their deaths. Although the other 3 did not manage to kill their targets, they were severely injured. The 5 enlightened masters of the Falling Star sect were dead while the other party had 2 dead and 3 injured. Although it seemed like the number of casualties was unequal, it was extremely difficult to cause casualties in a situation where there was a huge disparity in strength. Of course, if not for Chizhua's arrows from afar, the casualties would have been much higher. However, Chizhua's arrows were too powerful. Even enlightened masters of the same cultivation realm could not withstand them, let alone those below 3 enlightened masters. Because of Chizhua's arrows from afar, the 5 enlightened masters of the Falling Star sect had no hope of escaping even if they managed to break out of the encirclement. They could only fight to the death. The enlightened masters jumped off the 4-winged flying snake's back and observed the traces of the battle. There were bloodstains, burning ashes, and Yixing's blood-stained clothes. Yixing is dead. Where's Yun Zhanfei? Why didn't he join us? Did he want to take the superior-grade air transportation spiritual artifact for himself and run away? To make up for yesterday's second update, looking for recommendations on Monday. Chapter 346. The Flying Cloud sect was in great trouble. Yixing and Yun Zhanfei fought, but no one thought that the one who died was Yun Zhanfei. The true sages thought that the person who was burned to ashes was Yixing. As for Yun Zhanfei, he had snatched away Yixing's treasures and wanted to take them all for himself, thus he had run away. On Yixing's body, there was not only a high-grade flying spirit artifact, but also a high-grade spirit artifact, the Blazing Flame set and the Black Dragon Spear. These were all items that had been revealed at the 10-sect grand competition. Moreover, as for the 4-winged flying snake's madness, no one had been able to react at first. But as they thought about it, they realized that Yixing must have obtained the top-grade spirit weapon, the Eye of Blue Cloud, in the Blue Cloud ancient land. Thus, he was able to interfere with the thoughts of monster beasts. The Eye of Blue Cloud was a top-grade spirit weapon. In the Blue Cloud region, it was a priceless treasure. If so many treasures were obtained by Yun Zhanfei, then as the true sages thought about it, no matter who obtained these treasures, there was no reason for them to be shared with others. Thus, it made sense for Yun Zhanfei to take all the treasures and run away. This was what the true sages thought. Although they understood Yun Zhanfei's feelings, if they were in his shoes, they would also do the same. But the true sages were unhappy, extremely unhappy. As they thought about how so many treasures had been taken away by Yun Zhanfei, the true sages hated Yun Zhanfei to the bone. Poor Yun Zhanfei. Even after his death, he was hated by everyone. However, Yun Zhanfei's initial thought was to take all the treasures and run away. The true sages didn't wrong him. However, no one expected that Yun Zhanfei, a 1-star true sages, would chase down Yi Xing, an 8-star martial saint, and in the end die under Yi Xing's hands. An 8-star martial saint killing a 1-star true sages? Moreover, he was a top-class 1-star true sages? Of the 9 true sages present, not a single one of them had this thought. Occasionally, this thought would flash through their minds, but they would immediately reject it. If Yun Zhanfei hadn't caught up with Yi Xing, then it would be possible. But if he had caught up with Yi Xing and fought with him, then Yi Xing would have absolutely no reason to escape. The enlightened masters were certain that the dead person was Yi Xing, and they were certain that Yun Zhanfei had taken all the treasures for himself and escaped. Because of their hatred for Yun Zhanfei, all the spiritual masters were filled with anger towards the other spiritual master of the Flying Cloud sect. Chou Buohong was a 2-star sage of the Flying Cloud sect. He had a high position in the Flying Cloud sect, and his position was comparable to the sect master Yun Zhankong. He was one of the top 3 powerhouses in the Flying Cloud sect. However, at this moment, Chou Buohong's back was drenched in cold sweat. Qizhua, Watanabe Tan, and the rest of the 8 perfected masters were glaring at him angrily, causing his hair to stand on end. Chou Buohong cursed Yun Zhanfei 1,000 times in his heart. Yun Zhanfei had taken so many treasures for himself, he would definitely not return to the Flying Cloud sect. However, if these people could not find Yun Zhanfei, the Flying Cloud sect would have to take the blame for Yun Zhanfei. Chou Buohong said with fear, "Everyone, Yun Zhanfei was only blinded by the treasures for a moment, and his mind was muddled. He will definitely return, and our Flying Cloud sect will also find him and make him hand over the treasures so that we can divide them equally." Chou Buohong was afraid that the 8 spiritual masters would vent their anger on him. If they were to make a move on him, he would be reduced to ashes in an instant. Qijua's face was very ugly. He was a spiritual master of the Sun Moon sect. If Yun Zhanfei took out Yi Xing's treasures and distributed them, the Sun Moon sect would get the best things. However, Qizhua did not even get a single thing. Even the Falling Star sect's sect master's ring, Lu Tianyuan had already given it to Yi Xing. It could be seen that Yun Zhanfei had it as well. Qizhua looked at Chou Buohong coldly and said, "Everyone listen up. Put Yun Zhanfei on the wanted list in the entire Qingyun region. If he hands over the treasures, everything will be fine. Otherwise, the Flying Cloud sect will pay the price." Kunyan Mountain Range, Star Crystal Vein. Yi Xing used the black feather wings to fly all the way here. After reporting his identity, Gu Tianshang opened the array and Yi Xing entered. There were multiple level 3 arrays set up by Lin Fenghua here. It was the last fortress of the Falling Star sect. Of the 14 spiritual masters of the 6 went to the old site of the Azure Cloud sect, 6 stayed in the sect, and 2 guarded the Star Crystal Vein. This was the last strength of the Falling Star sect. The 2 spiritual masters guarding the Star Crystal Vein were both 1-star spiritual masters. They were the War Pavilion Elder Lin Dongxing and the Affairs Hall Elder Zhang Maoxing. When Yi Xing passed through the array, the first person he saw was Zishan Ho. "Master!" Yi Xing immediately ran up, looking surprised and happy. Hua Tianshu and Zishan Ho had a grudge against each other. Now that the Falling Star sect was destroyed, Hua Tianshu would not let Zishan Ho go. Therefore, Yi Xing had always thought that his master, Zishan Ho, was doomed. He did not expect to see Zishan Ho in the Star Crystal Vein and was pleasantly surprised. Zishan Ho's eyes were also full of surprise. Good. Yi Xing, it's great that you can come here safely. My Falling Star sect is not destroyed, and there is hope for a comeback." However, in the depths of Zishan Ho's eyes, there was a hint of sadness. The fallen gate had been broken, and his most respected Grand Elder Lin Shuyun had died in battle. Even when he saw that Yi Xing was safe and was pleasantly surprised, the sadness in the depths of his heart did not dissipate. After the surprise, Yi Xing also showed a sad expression. "I was lucky to escape, but the sect master and the elders..." Yi Xing thought of the scene where Lu Tianyuan and the others let the purple flame monarch eagle carry him to escape, while they fought the enemy to the death. He was extremely angry and sad, unable to speak. Zishan Ho patted Yi Xing's shoulder and said, "We already know that Yu Pinghai betrayed the sect, and the sect master and the others died in battle in the Azure Cloud Mountain Range, but they did not regret it. Their last concern was whether you could come back safely. Now that you are here, it proves that they did not die in vain. They can rest in peace in the underworld." Before Lu Tianyuan died, he used the communication bead to send a message to the star crystal vein, asking Gu Tianshang to keep an eye on the outside and wait for Yi Xing to come back. Gu Tianshang and Zishan Ho had already discussed this matter, so Zishan Ho naturally knew what happened to Lu Tianyuan and the others. On the side, Gu Tianshang also walked over. His hair was still white, but the wrinkles on his face were gone. His skin was much smoother, and he seemed to be dozens of years younger. Gu Tianshang walked to Yi Xing, patted Yi Xing's shoulder and said, "Yi Xing, the future of the Falling Star sect depends on you. You have to work hard to drive the East Fu sect out of the Falling Star Kingdom as soon as possible and rebuild the Falling Star sect." Yi Xing nodded. He looked at Gu Tianshang with surprise and said, "Elder Gu, you have broken through to the astral realm?" A perfected cultivator in the astral realm had a lifespan of 200 years. Gu Tianshang was a half-step perfected cultivator in his 80s, with white hair and a face full of wrinkles. Now, he was dozens of years younger. Without looking at his hair, he looked like he was in his 40s. There was only one possibility, and that was that he had broken through and increased his lifespan. That was why he looked younger. Gu Tianshang nodded, and there was a look of enlightenment in his eyes. He said, "I was lucky to break through, Sai." It seemed that Gu Tianshang was not happy about breaking through to the astral realm. Zishan Ho said, "There was also a traitor in the Star Crystal Mine." Elder Zhang Maoxing of the Affair Hall suddenly attacked and severely injured Elder Lin Dongxing. He wanted to destroy the formation of the Star Crystal Mine from the inside and kill Elder Gu. If the Falling Star sect was taken over by the East Fu sect, then the Falling Star sect would lose its last piece of land. At the critical moment of the sect's survival, Elder Gu broke through the bottleneck of decades and became a level 3 array master, a perfected cultivator in the astral realm, and killed the traitor Zhang Maoxing. Zishan Ho sighed and continued, "Elder Gu achieved enlightenment, breaking through both the Tao of formations and the Tao of martial arts. This should be a joyous occasion, but the price is too great." Elder Gu's voice was melancholy. He said, "If I could choose, I would only want the Falling Star sect to be safe and sound. I would have no regrets if I could not break through in martial Tao and array Tao in this generation." Gu Tianshang had been stimulated by the life and death of his sect. He had been enlightened and resolved the inner demons that had imprisoned him for decades. A great talent matured slowly, and he had made breakthroughs in both martial arts and formations. If it were not for this experience, Gu Tianshang would not be able to make any progress in either array Tao or martial Tao at his old age. The cause and effect of this was indeed costly. No wonder Gu Tianshang was not happy even though he was enlightened. He would rather not be enlightened at all. Looking for recommendation votes ++++++1. Chapter 347. Yi Xing was silent. Like Gu Tianshang, his cultivation had broken through to the 8th level of the Star Vortex realm because of the destruction of his sect. His state of mind had sublimated, and he had broken through. Although this had greatly increased Yi Xing's cultivation speed, Yi Xing and Gu Tianshang had the same idea. If the Falling Star sect was not destroyed, and if Master Lin Fenghua and sect leader Lu Tianyuan were not dead, Yi Xing would rather not break through. Sigh. Yi Xing was touched and sighed. Zishan patted Yi Xing's shoulder again and said, "The sect has been destroyed. You are the only hope of the Falling Star sect. The future of the Falling Star sect is in your hands. You must be strong and pull yourself together." Yi Xing nodded. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration and said, "My family?" Although Yi Xing had burned Yun Zhanfei's body to ashes and left a false impression that Yun Zhanfei had killed him, the other party might not believe it. If the other party knew that he was not dead but couldn't catch him, then his family might be in danger. Although Yi Xing's feelings for the Ye family and his parents were very faint, or even close to none, he didn't want the Ye family to suffer because of him. The Ye family was his starting point in the Star Continent. Yi Xing only wanted the Ye family to develop better and better. Zi Shanhou comforted Yi Xing and said, Chu Jingyue told me that Hua Tianshu had betrayed the sect. After the sect was destroyed, I went to your family immediately and brought your parents here. As for the entire Yi clan, because there are too many people, there's no time, and there's no need for that. You've already left your clan, and you're a disciple of the Falling Star sect. Even if the Dong Fu sect wants to force you, they will only target your parents, not your clan. The East Rising Star sect was one of the 6 southern sects, while the Ye family was only a small family in the Falling Star Kingdom. There was a world of difference between the two. For a family like the Ye family to have such an accomplished warrior like Yi Xing, other than their own family members, the rest of the family members were not close. The East Rising Star sect knew that they couldn't use the Ye family to force Yi Xing out. Using a Rising Star sect to deal with an ordinary warrior's family was simply lowering their status. The only possibility was that the Dong Fu sect had captured Yi Xing's family and used them to force Yi Xing. However, that wouldn't have much of an effect, as the chances of the Dong Fu sect doing something like that were very low. However, Zishan Ho eliminated that possibility and immediately brought Yi Feihong and Lu Yi to the Star Crystal Mine to protect them. Yi Xing was surprised. Chu Jingyue? Did she escape? Zishan Ho nodded. Because she is Hua Tianshu's disciple, she managed to escape the calamity. The moment her sect was destroyed, she escaped on a black-feathered eagle and came to Zishan County to tell me the news. Otherwise, I would have been encircled by Hua Tianshu's men and died. Now, Chu Jingyue isn't doing well. Hua Tianshu has taken her life essence. She's now pale as if she's 70 or 80 years old. I'm afraid she won't live for more than a few years. Yi Xing was shocked. How could this be? Zishan Ho sighed. I heard from Chu Jingyue that she's practicing a technique called the art of marrying beauty. This technique should be a kind of evil technique. It's very smooth to practice, but there's a disadvantage. After practicing it, one's life essence will be sucked away. Hua Tianshu must have practiced a beauty cultivation technique that can restrain the art of marrying beauty. She absorbed Chu Jinyue's life essence just to preserve her appearance. Hua Tianshu again. Yi Xing's heart surged with an extremely strong murderous intent towards Hua Tianshu. Yi Xing said, Where is she now? I'll go see her. In Yi Xing's heart, Chu Jingyue was one of his few friends. She was much more important than Yi Feihong and Lu Ao. Yi Xing only wanted to hear the news of Yi Feihong and Lu Ao's safety. He didn't want to meet them, but after hearing news of Chu Jingyue, he couldn't help but want to visit. Zishan Ho waved his hand. She definitely doesn't want to meet you now. You'd better not go see her. Yi Xing frowned. How can she be cured after losing her life essence? Zishan Ho said, This isn't an injury, but the loss of her life essence. Even a pill that can revive the dead can't save her. However, some heavenly treasures that can prolong her life and replenish her life essence may be able to restore her youth. However, this is the same as the pill that can revive the dead. It only exists in legends and is something that can only be encountered but not sought. Yi Xing said, Sigh. This can only depend on luck. If I encounter a heavenly treasure that can prolong her life in the future, I'll try to get it and help her. Not to mention his friendship with her, just the fact that Chu Jingyue had informed Zishan Ho immediately after the sect's destruction allowed Zishan Ho to escape from Hua Tianshu's revenge. Moreover, she had also allowed his cheap parents to safely arrive at the Star Crystal Mine. Yi Xing had to do his best to repay her kindness. These things will depend on the future. Let's talk about it later. Gu Tianshang interrupted their conversation and said to Yi Xing, Now, your first task is to increase your cultivation and quickly break through to the astral realm. Increase your strength and drive the East Fu sect out of the Falling Star Kingdom as soon as possible. Then rebuild the Falling Star sect. Yi Xing nodded and said, I understand, but cultivation can't be rushed. I've just broken through to the 8-star Martial Saint realm. No matter how much I cultivate, it's hard to increase my cultivation in a short time. I'm going to cultivate martial skills and increase my strength first. In 3 months, the Young Hero Assembly held by the 9 sect alliances will begin. I want to represent the Falling Star sect and fight for a good ranking. Both Gu Tianshang and Zishanho laughed. Gu Tianshang said, I can guarantee that your cultivation will reach a higher level very soon. Zishanho nodded at the side. Yi Xing asked in surprise, why? Gu Tianshang said, there are joys and sorrows in life. Today, the sect's destruction is heartbreaking. However, what happened today is not all bad. There is also a good thing. Yi Xing looked at Gu Tianshang and Zishanho in surprise. If it could be called a good thing at this time, then it must be a great thing. Gu Tianshang said, today, there was another discovery in the star crystal lode. In the depths of the lode, there are higher quality star crystals. Below that, there is a middle-grade star crystal lode. In the middle-grade star crystal lode, there is a higher quality star crystal spiritual milk. Originally, I planned to distribute the star crystal spiritual milk to the 10 elite disciples who entered the Azure Cloud ancient land. Now, only you have returned. Moreover, you are the hope of reviving the Falling Star sect. All the star crystal spiritual milk in the middle-grade star crystal lode belongs to you. It will allow you to increase your cultivation at the fastest speed and rebuild the Falling Star sect as soon as possible. Yi Xing's eyes widened as he exclaimed, middle-grade star crystal lode? Star crystals were divided into low, middle, and high grade. One high-grade star crystal was equivalent to 100 low-grade star crystals. One middle-grade star crystal was equivalent to 100 low-grade star crystals. In the Azure Cloud region, high-grade star crystals were a legend. Middle-grade star crystals were extremely precious. Setting up a level 3 array and restoring astral energy would require a lot of them. In the entire Azure Cloud region, no one had heard of a middle-grade star crystal lode. The middle-grade star crystals in the hands of the top 10 sects were all exchanged from other places in the True Shen domain. For the 6 sects in the southern part of the Azure Cloud region, the middle-grade star crystals of the enlightened masters and elders of the sects were probably only a few thousand. Even the richest sect only had tens of thousands of middle-grade star crystals. However, a mid-grade star crystal vein would contain an enormous amount of mid-grade star crystals. There would be at least 1 million mid-grade star crystals. In other words, a middle-grade star crystal lode was worth more than 100 sects of the same level as the 6 southern sects. One could imagine how much wealth this was. Not to mention the 6 southern sects, even the 4 northern sects were worth less than half a middle-grade star crystal lode. It was no wonder that Gu Tianshang said that it was a good thing when the Falling Star sect was going through a calamity. It was indeed a great thing. Even the 9 upper sects might not have a middle-grade star crystal lode. The Falling Star sect had a middle-grade star crystal lode, so it would not lack financial resources to rebuild the sect in the future. What it lacked was strength. As long as it had the strength to rebuild with the financial support of the middle-grade star crystal lode, the Falling Star sect would definitely develop rapidly and become the overlord of the Azure Cloud region. Compared to the value of the entire medium-grade star crystal lode, the star crystal spiritual milk that was produced along with the lode was something that could only be found by chance, but it didn't shock Yi Xing as much. After all, Yi Xing had seen star crystal spiritual milk before. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor, Nyoibo Studio. Chapter 348. The low-grade star crystal vein was located between 100 and 1,000 meters underground. 1,000 meters underground was the mid-grade star crystal vein. As for how deep it was, it had not been explored yet. The star crystal spiritual milk produced by the mid-grade star crystal lode was about 1,000 meters underground. However, Yi Xing had to walk a few miles to get to this place. The star crystal spiritual milk was located in a natural underground hall. It was very spacious, more than 10 zhang high, and almost 100 meters wide. When the miners excavating the low-grade star crystals found the star crystal spiritual milk in the center of the hall, they reported it to the person in charge of the star crystal vein, Gu Tiansheng. Lin Dongxing and Zhang Maoxing were perfected persons who were in charge of the star crystal vein. Gu Tiansheng was only a half-step perfected persons, so his position was lower than theirs. However, the formation of the star crystal vein was completely controlled by Gu Tiansheng. Therefore, Gu Tiansheng was the real person in charge of the star crystal vein. The two perfected persons were responsible for guarding the star crystal vein. Therefore, they only reported the mid-grade star crystal vein to Gu Tiansheng. When Gu Tiansheng heard about it, he immediately blocked the news. At the same time, he also sealed the hall where the mid-grade star crystal vein was located and sent his trusted subordinates to guard it. No one was allowed to enter. Now, Gu Tiansheng had let Yixing absorb the star crystal spiritual milk. After bringing Yixing here, he naturally dismissed the guards. Yixing looked at the star crystal spiritual milk in the center of the hall. The amount was about the same as the low-grade star crystal vein, but the quality was one level higher. The star crystal spiritual milk in the low-grade star crystal vein allowed Yixing to break through from a half-step martial saint to a 2-star martial saint. It seemed that the star crystal spiritual milk here could help him break through to the 9th-level star spiral realm, or even higher. Yixing withdrew his gaze from the star crystal spiritual milk pool and said, "Master, Elder Gu, there are many things I haven't fully comprehended yet. I may need to cultivate in seclusion for a while. If I don't come out, you don't need to worry." Zi Shanho nodded. Gu Tiansheng said, "You can cultivate in seclusion for as long as you want. I'm waiting for you to soar to the sky." After Zi Shanho and Gu Tiansheng left, Yixing did not rush to absorb the star crystal spiritual milk pool. He had just broken through to the 8-star martial saint realm today. Although his mental state was strong enough to continue improving his cultivation, and he could use the star crystal spiritual milk to replenish his energy and make another breakthrough, it was too fast. After all, his foundation was unstable. Moreover, when Yixing's state of mind was sublimated, Taoist connotation was added to his body. He had a lot of enlightenment, but he didn't fully understand it. He had to strengthen his comprehension while he still had the feeling and completely transform it into his own. Otherwise, if too much time passed, the feeling would disappear, and it would be extremely difficult to comprehend anything again. His greatest gain during these few days was that his comprehension of thought force had once again increased by a level, and it had attained the 4th level. Zi Shanho's power of heart was only at the 3rd stage. When Yixing fought with Yun Zhanfei, his power of heart was also at the 3rd stage. 9th stage of heart force. The first 3 levels were of 1 grade and were relatively easy to raise. The middle 3 levels were also of 1 grade and were much more difficult to raise than the first 3 levels. The last 3 levels were of 1 grade and were extremely difficult to raise. Yixing's heart force broke through from the 3rd stage to the 4th stage. This was a qualitative breakthrough, a huge breakthrough. This meant that Yixing's archery had reached the level of 4 transformations. As his attainments in archery improved, Yixing's attainments in the 4 symbols archery technique also improved. Although he had yet to practice archery, his intuition told him that his 4 symbols archery technique had reached the consummate realm. The power of thought was closely related to a cultivator's martial attainments. With the 4th stage of heart force, it was not difficult for Yixing to cultivate the 4 symbols archery art to perfection. This also included the dark spirit spear art and heavenly bat footwork art that had long reached perfection. Yixing stopped comprehending. The 4th stage of heart force was an extremely high level of comprehension among astral realm sages. Yixing was only an 8-star martial saint. He had only reached this level by chance. Now that he had passed the state, it was impossible for him to continue improving his comprehension of heart force. Yixing was not in a hurry to cultivate martial arts. Instead, he sat down beside the star crystal spiritual milk and absorbed it, preparing to break through to 9-star martial saint. Although Yixing had only broken through to 8-star martial saint for a short time, The battle with one-star martial saint Yun Zhanfei had allowed him to completely familiarize himself with the cultivation state of an 8-star martial saint. After 5 days and 5 nights of comprehension, it was also very beneficial to his consolidation of cultivation. Although his cultivation foundation was not very stable now, it was enough for him to break through to 9-star martial saint. The Young Hero Assembly would be held in 2 months. At that time, Yi Xing would be facing the younger generation of the entire True Xian domain. Many of them would be true human realm geniuses with great strength. Yi Xing knew that it would be difficult for him to compete with the younger generation of true human realm geniuses with just the cultivation of an 8-star martial saint. Therefore, he had to improve his cultivation. Yi Xing used the black hole astrology and the high-grade falling star art to absorb the star crystal spiritual milk. His cultivation increased rapidly. The quality of the star crystal spiritual milk was different, so the speed of absorption was very different. When Yi Xing was a half-step martial saint, it only took him a little more than 2 hours to absorb the star crystal spiritual milk in the low-grade star crystal vein. Now that he was an 8-star martial saint, it took him a whole day to absorb the star crystal spiritual milk around him, but he had only absorbed 1/3 of the total amount. After a whole day, Yi Xing's cultivation finally had a qualitative breakthrough. The star vortex in his dantian expanded and reached the limit of the star vortex realm. The strength of the star essence in his body continued to increase. The higher the strength of the star essence, the closer it was to the star essence. It would be easier to transform it into star essence in the future. 9-star martial saint, the last stage of the celestial vortex realm. Yi Xing had never dared to dream of reaching this stage in the past. Now, he had already reached this stage before he was even 18 years old. Some dreams and goals seemed very far away at first. However, after a period of time, when one looked back, one would realize that one had unknowingly reached or even surpassed one's dreams or goals. At this time, when one thought about the past, one would realize that it was silly to be confused and worried about the future. When Yi Xing thought about the past, he became even more confident. Since he could reach his goal now, then one day in the future, he would definitely reach his current goal and become the most powerful warrior in the Star Continent, reaching the peak of the martial Tao. After breaking through to the 9-star martial saint, Yi Xing continued to absorb the star crystal spiritual milk. The next realm breakthrough was from the star vortex realm to the astral realm. The half-step enlightened being in between was just a transitional stage. It could not be considered a cultivation breakthrough. Therefore, Yi Xing could consolidate his cultivation to the half-step enlightened being in one fell swoop. He could stop cultivating before the next cultivation breakthrough and wait until he had completely adapted to the half-step enlightened being's cultivation before breaking through to the astral realm. Breaking through to the astral realm is easier said than done. I'm afraid that even if I absorb all the star crystal spiritual milk here, I still won't be able to break through. I'll just absorb it boldly. Let's talk about it later. Yi Xing observed the amount of star crystal spiritual milk and thought to himself. 2 days later, not a drop of star crystal spiritual milk was left. All of it had been absorbed by Yi Xing. Yi Xing's cultivation had stabilized to the half-step enlightened being. Moreover, half of the astral energy in his body had been transformed. He was at the peak of the half-step enlightened being. Thanks to Yi Xing's continuous cultivation, the high-grade falling star incantation had risen another level, reaching the 4th layer. This caused Yi Xing's astral stars to be extremely condensed and of extremely high quality. Compared to enlightened 1-star's astral stars, they were only inferior in terms of quantity. Feeling the surging energy in his body, Yi Xing was confident that with his current strength, he would not be inferior to Yun Zhanfei in a head-on battle. If he used all his trump cards, he would be able to kill Yun Zhanfei in a matter of minutes. This was not blind arrogance, but genuine confidence. He had fought Yun Zhanfei head-on before, so he was clear about Yun Zhanfei's strength. In terms of martial arts, he was not inferior to Yun Zhanfei. In terms of astral energy, he was not inferior to Yun Zhanfei. Moreover, Yi Xing's comprehension of the grand momentum of heaven and earth was far superior to Yun Zhanfei. Other than the fact that his astral energy was inferior to Yun Zhanfei's and that he could not fight for a long time, he surpassed Yun Zhanfei in all other aspects. Chapter 349. Yun Zhanfei is much stronger than Watanabe Ing. Amongst the one-star true masters, he should be relatively strong. My current strength surpasses Yun Zhanfei's by a great deal. Sweeping away the one-star true masters shouldn't be a problem. I just don't know if I can fight a one-star true master without revealing the Sagittarius constellation and the Black Hole constellation. Yi Xing muttered to himself as he stood up, feeling the surging strength in his body. My heart force has reached the 4th level. It won't be difficult for me to cultivate the 4 symbols arrow art, dark spirit spear art, and heavenly bat steps to the boundary of perfection. Moreover, I can also cultivate the astral flame fist to a higher level. If my martial arts attainments can take another step forward, then even if I don't use the Sagittarius constellation and the Black Hole constellation, I should be able to sweep away a 2-star true master. In the following time, I will cultivate martial arts with all my strength and increase my strength. With a thought, Yi Xing lifted his hand and the high-grade spirit weapon, the Black Dragon Spear, appeared in his hand. But in the blink of an eye, the Black Dragon Spear was put away by Yi Xing. The Dark Spirit Spear art was immensely powerful. In particular, with the Dark Spirit Spear art at the perfection boundary, just how powerful would a single spear thrust out be? This was an underground cave. If Yi Xing were to use this move with all his strength, the entire hall would collapse. Yi Xing's current strength was enough to contend with an early true master. At this degree, he couldn't casually cultivate martial arts anywhere. Yi Xing left the underground hall and returned to the surface, finding Zi Shanhou and Gu Tiansheng. What? You want to go out adventuring so soon? Just what degree has your cultivation reached? I can no longer see through it. As Zi Shanhou and Gu Tiansheng heard Yi Xing's words, they were both startled. Yi Xing released his cultivation. He nodded and said, I need a spacious place to cultivate martial arts. The space here is too small and there are array formations all around. It's not suitable for me to cultivate here. Moreover, the Young Hero Assembly is just around the corner. This place is very far from Nine Heavens City, so I have to leave early. Therefore, I won't return here after I leave this place. I will first find a place to cultivate my martial arts, then head straight to Nine Heavens City. When I return, the Dongfu sect will be doomed. Gu Tiansheng said worriedly, the true mystic region is very big. It has a circumference of 1,000,000 miles. Even a true human rank flying mount would take 10 days to half a month to reach the Nine Heavens City. The journey is very long, and you are only a half-step true human rank. It is very dangerous for you to travel alone. I don't think you should participate in the Young Hero Assembly. You are absolutely safe here. It doesn't matter if your cultivation is slow. With your potential, you will grow sooner or later. It won't be too late to rebuild the Meteor Fall sect when you have full confidence. Zi Shanhou also nodded and said, Yi Xing, you are the hope of the safety first. Yi Xing shook his head and said, if a warrior hides in a place to cultivate, not only will his cultivation speed be slow, it will also be difficult for him to achieve anything. Only by growing through experience can he become a true expert. There is something I need at the Young Hero Assembly, so I must go. Master, Elder Gu, don't stop me. Although I am alone, I have my own means to protect myself. Most of the true human rank experts can't do anything to me. Yi Xing was eyeing the Young Hero Assembly's first prize, the Resurrection Pill. Although he felt that with his half-step true human rank cultivation, the chances of him winning the first place were not high, he still had to work hard. Moreover, Yi Xing also wanted to see the outside world and compete with the young geniuses of the true mystic region. The world was very big, and if one wanted to become a true expert, they had to go out and explore. If one wanted to become a powerhouse in this world, they had to at least get to know this world and understand the martial artists in this world. If one didn't even understand the outside world and only knew how to cultivate bitterly in one place, how could one become a powerhouse if one didn't even know how strong one was? Yi Xing had made up his mind, so Gu Tiansheng and Zi Shanhou didn't stop him. They told Yi Xing to be careful outside and gave him a large amount of mid-grade star crystals to let Yi Xing leave the star crystal lode. Yi Xing left the star crystal lode after dusk. He traveled in the night without anyone noticing. Even if someone was watching outside the star crystal lode, they wouldn't be able to find him. After he was far away from the star crystal lode, Yi Xing dispersed the dark aura and a pair of black wings grew out from his back. Wu Xixing spread his wings and flew as fast as lightning towards the depths of the Blue Cloud Mountain Range. The night of the Blue Cloud Mountain Range was the world of demonic beasts. Beasts roared continuously and Yi Xing often saw the silhouettes of demonic beasts in the sky. To Yi Xing, the Blue Cloud Mountain Range was like his back garden. No matter how many demonic beasts there were, he was not afraid. Firstly, Yi Xing had a flying spirit tool and could fly in the sky. If it wasn't a flying spirit tool, no matter how many demonic beasts there were, they wouldn't be able to touch him. Secondly, Yi Xing had the eyes of Blue Cloud. Unless it was a mid-rank 3 demonic beast or above, it wouldn't be a threat to Yi Xing. Instead, it would be controlled by Yi Xing. Thirdly, if Yi Xing used his Blue Cloud wings to escape, even a mid-rank 3 demonic beast wouldn't be able to catch up to him. Therefore, in the Blue Cloud ancient land, be it day or night, Yi Xing was very safe. Yi Xing came to the depths of the Blue Cloud Mountain Range for 2 reasons. Firstly, there was no human habitation in the Blue Cloud Mountain Range, which was suitable for Yi Xing to practice martial arts. Secondly, Yi Xing wanted to find a demonic beast equivalent to a 3-star venerable and use his eyes of Blue Cloud to control it as his pet. Although Yi Xing had a flight-type spiritual artifact, the flight-type spiritual artifact consumed his celestial essence and energy. Moreover, the journey to the 9 Heaven City was very long, and it wasn't something that could be reached in a day or 2. Therefore, Yi Xing preferred to ride on a demonic bird. Although it wasn't slow, it was much easier. There weren't many demonic beasts equivalent to a 3-star venerable in the Blue Cloud Mountain Range. The closer one was to the center, the easier it was to encounter one. Yi Xing flew for a few hours and reached an area deeper than the old site of the Blue Cloud sect before stopping. The area where Yi Xing was located was a rare flatland in the Azure Cloud Mountain Range. It spanned several li in radius and the view was vast. Regardless of whether it was practicing spear arts, light martial arts, or archery, it was an ideal location. What surprised Yi Xing was that he didn't find a single monster beast in this area. This place is suitable for practicing martial arts. I'll cultivate my martial arts here to the boundary of perfection and then look for a flying mount. Yi Xing thought to himself. Whoosh! After a long time, Yi Xing used his black feather wings and shot into the skies. He flew dozens of miles before finding a 3rd-level monster beast. Using his eyes of Blue Cloud to control it, he brought it to the flat area. This was a black-armored iron bull, equal to a 1-star venerable. The reason Yi Xing brought this monster beast here was to have it stand guard at his side. Whether it was resting or practicing martial arts, Yi Xing didn't want to be disturbed. Although there weren't any other monster beasts here, Yi Xing still had to be on guard. With a 3rd-level monster beast black-armored iron bull standing guard, it would save him a great deal of trouble. With the black-armored iron bull standing guard at his side, Yi Xing took a nap. After dawn arrived, he ate some food from his storage ring and then took out the black dragon spear. Using the black hole star avatar, he began to practice the dark spirit spear arts. Now Yi Xing had a half-step true master cultivation and 50% of his celestial essence had been transformed into astral energy. When he used his spear, the spear shadows that erupted turned from energy to astral light. The power behind them was terrifying. With every move he used, the air in front of him would surge. Sand and stones would fly into the air, and wind blades would tear through the air, emitting whistling sounds. Bang! In particular, the dark spirit spear arts was even more terrifying. With a thrust of Yi Xing's spear, the earth would shake and a layer of the ground would rise up for dozens of meters. Wherever the spear point pointed, a massive crater would appear from the impact of the terrifying strength. Only in this desolate and uninhabited place could Yi Xing completely let loose. When he practiced the dark spirit spear arts, he had to display his full strength. Only like this could he thoroughly comprehend the dark spirit spear arts and fuse it with the power of his mind, reaching the boundary of perfection. After practicing the dark spirit spear arts 10 times, Yixing began to gasp for breath. He switched to practicing the heavenly bat steps to adjust his physical strength and celestial essence consumption. The first day quickly passed. Yixing could feel that whether it was the dark spirit spear arts or the heavenly bat steps, he had increased his attainments in both. His comprehensions were becoming increasingly profound. The next day, Yixing continued to practice. When he used the dark spirit spear arts, the earth trembled and rumbling sounds filled his ears. The 4th level of heart force had an extraordinary effect on increasing one's martial arts attainments. By noon, Yixing's dark spirit spear arts had successfully broken through to the boundary of perfection. Mu! Yixing was overjoyed. At this time, the black-armored demon bull guarding the edge of the plains suddenly cried out. Chapter 350. The black-scaled demonic bull cried out in warning. Someone or a demonic beast was coming this way. Yixing looked towards the direction of the black-scaled demonic bull. After a short while, a demonic bird crossed a mountain ridge and appeared in Yixing's field of vision, arriving in the sky above the plains. Yixing looked into the distance and his face changed. His eyes suddenly shot out a beam of light. This demonic bird was a level 2 overlord demonic beast, red-tailed eagle, which was equivalent to a half-step enlightened master. What made Yixing's face change was not the red-tailed eagle, but a 2-star enlightened master standing on the back of the red-tailed eagle. In the depths of the Azure Cloud Mountain Range, in the heart of the demonic beast territory, it was a coincidence to see a human martial artist. What was even more coincidental was that Yixing recognized this 2-star enlightened master. 10 days ago, the Falling Star sect was attacked by several enlightened masters, and this person was one of them. Yixing remembered very clearly that he was together with the Flying Cloud sect's Yun Zhanfei. At that time, the enlightened masters and elders of the sect all transmitted the names of these enemies to Yixing. This person was the Flying Cloud sect's elder, Choubuohong. Yixing never expected that in just 10 days he would meet one of his enemies, Choubuohong, in the depths of the Azure Cloud Mountain Range. After a trace of surprise, Yixing's eyes naturally flashed, revealing his killing intent. Choubuohong rode the red-tailed eagle and quickly flew over. When he saw Yixing, his expression was also surprised, but then he revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. In these 10 days, the Flying Cloud sect was pressured by the Sun Moon sect, East Supporting sect, Blood Spectre sect, and Wind God sect to hand over Yun Zhanfei. Otherwise, the Flying Cloud sect would compensate Yun Zhanfei for the treasures he took from Yixing. On Yixing's body, there were 2 high-grade spirit weapons. One was suspected to be a high-grade flying spirit weapon. Its value was at least equal to a top-grade spirit weapon. The Falling Star sect's sect master's ring was a middle-grade storage ring. Its value was no less than a high-grade spirit weapon. The Flying Cloud sect couldn't afford it even if they lost all their property. Therefore, these days, the Flying Cloud sect was burning with anxiety, looking for Yun Zhanfei everywhere. At the same time, the other sects were also looking for Yun Zhanfei in the Qingyun region. However, there was no news of Yun Zhanfei. Therefore, they suspected that Yun Zhanfei was still hiding in the Qingyun mountain range. For this reason, the Flying Cloud sect dispatched many Taoist masters and elders to search the Azure Cloud mountain range. However, how vast was the Azure Cloud mountain range? Looking for a person inside was equivalent to looking for a needle in a haystack. Every Taoist master of the Flying Cloud sect was responsible for searching a very large area. Yixing's current location was within the area that Choubuohong was in charge of searching. Today, Choubuohong was searching not far away when he was attracted by the commotion caused by Yixing practicing the dark spirit spear arts. He flew over on a red-tailed eagle. However, instead of Yun Zhanfei, he saw Yixing. How could he not be shocked? Seeing Yixing, Choubuohong instantly understood that the person who was burned to ashes should be Yun Zhanfei. Their previous judgment was completely wrong, ridiculously wrong. However, after the shock, Chou Buhong's mood quickly turned into pleasant surprise. Yi Xing didn't die. This meant that Yi Xing's treasures were still on Yi Xing's body. Furthermore, Yun Zhanfei's mid-grade flying spirit tool was also on Yi Xing's body. Looking at Yi Xing, Chou Buhong's eyes were filled with joy as if he was looking at a big treasure. Chou Buhong didn't want to share this big treasure with others. Therefore, when he saw Yi Xing, he was filled with pleasant surprise and didn't use the communication pearl to inform others. Like Yun Zhanfei, he wanted to take all the treasures on Yi Xing's body. 2 high-grade spirit weapons, a high-grade flying spirit tool, a mid-grade storage ring, and a mid-grade flying spirit tool. With these treasures, he could leave the Qingyun region and live a comfortable life in other places. He could even use these treasures to exchange for heavenly treasures that could increase his cultivation. Even if his potential was exhausted, he could still forcefully become a 3-star sage or even a 4-star sage. In the Star Land, strength represented status. If he became a 4-star sage, he would be a middle sage. How glorious would that be? As for whether he could kill Yi Xing, Yun Zhanfei didn't even consider it. Even if Yun Zhanfei died in Yi Xing's hands, Chou Buhong was still confident that he could kill Yi Xing. He was a 2-star sage, his strength was far from Yun Zhanfei's. Moreover, Chou Buhong didn't believe that Yi Xing killed Yun Zhanfei with his true strength. Yun Zhanfei must have underestimated his opponent. Moreover, Yi Xing must have used some kind of forbidden artifact or array disc that could threaten a sage's life. If Yi Xing killed Yun Zhanfei and used up those treasures, Chou Buhong didn't believe that Yi Xing would have more. Treasures that could kill a sage were extremely precious. Even Chou Buhong, a 2-star sage, didn't have them. Therefore, even if Yi Xing had more, it would only be by chance. It was impossible for him to have more than one. The red-tailed eagle stopped 1,000 meters away from Yi Xing. Chou Buhong stared at Yi Xing coldly. Yi Xing also stared back at him coldly. Both of their eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. They both thought of each other as a dead man. Before his dark spirit spear art reached the transformation stage, Yi Xing was already fearless of a 2-star sage after using all his trump cards. Now that his dark spirit spear art had reached the transformation stage, its power was incomparable to the perfect stage. It was comparable to an upper stage spiritual martial art. As for a 2-star sage, it was extremely difficult to cultivate an upper stage spiritual martial art to the initial stage. Yi Xing believed that even if there was a gap in cultivation, he could make up for it with his martial attainment and comprehension of the heaven and earth. Even if he did not use his 2 trump cards, the Sagittarius constellation and the Black Hole constellation, Yi Xing had absolute confidence to fight against a 2-star sage. On the red-tailed eagle, Chou Buhong looked down at Yi Xing from above and said, "Kid, you are not dead." The person who was burned to ashes was Yun Zhanfei. You purposely tore your clothes and scattered them nearby so that we would think that you were dead. We would think that Yun Zhanfei had taken all your treasures and ran away, so that we would shift our attention to the dead Yun Zhanfei. Then, we would not be able to find Yun Zhanfei to prove it. Kid, you are so scheming. Yi Xing looked at Chou Buhong coldly and said, "Isn't this the result that you want? Why are you pretending to be dissatisfied?" Chou Buhong laughed and said, "That's right, this is the result that I want. Kid, you are a smart person. You know what the result will be if you fall into my hands. I will give you a chance to end it quickly so that I don't have to do it myself." Yi Xing laughed coldly and said, "I'll end it myself? Are you an idiot? Don't tell me that I can't beat you down from that damn bird. Then I will slap your mouth and break your limbs. Finally, I will use my spiritual weapon to pierce your heart and make a big hole in your body. Or, I will also give you a chance to end it quickly so that I don't have to do it myself. You know what the result will be." Chou Buhong narrowed his eyes and the corners of his eyes twitched. Yi Xing was more unyielding than he had imagined. Although he knew that Yi Xing would not commit suicide because of his words, he would at least be afraid. However, he could not see the slightest trace of fear from Yi Xing. As a 2-star sage, he did not have the slightest bit of prestige in front of an 8-star martial saint. This made Chou Buhong very unhappy. At this time, with Yi Xing's astral energy locked down, Chou Buhong was unable to see through his specific cultivation. However, 10 days ago, Yixing had just broken through to 8-star martial saint. Chou Buhong naturally thought that Yixing was still an 8-star martial saint. He never imagined that Yixing had already used the star crystal spirit milk produced in the middle-grade star crystal vein to rapidly increase his cultivation to a half-step true sage. Moreover, he was a half-step true sage with 50% astral energy transformed. Of course, even if Chou Buhong knew that Yixing was a half-step true sage, he still had no fear. A half-step true sage could jump ranks and fight a 2-star sage? In Chou Buhong's life, in the history of the Clear Sky region, there had never been a monstrous genius with such a heaven-defying combat strength. You are courting death. Chou Buhong leapt down from the red-tailed eagle's back. He took out a middle-grade spirit spear and pointed it at Yixing, coldly saying. Yixing grasped the black dragon spear in his right hand and pointed it at the sky. You dare to use your spear in front of me? Die! Chou Buhong roared out in anger. In that instant, the middle-grade spirit spear in Chou Buhong's hand erupted with a brilliant light. With a flash of light, the air was torn apart and the spear thrust towards Yixing. Thank you, brothers, for your monthly votes. Chapter 351. Medium-grade Spirit Martial Art, Gale Spear Art. Chou Buhong's Gale Spear Art had already reached perfection. This was a spirit martial art that emphasized speed. Moreover, Chou Buhong's comprehension of the potential of the wind was extremely profound. This increased the speed of the Gale Spear Art. With a thrust of his spear, the distance of 1,000 meters was like a ruler. Although Chou Buhong was confident in himself and looked down on Yixing in terms of strength, because Yun Zhanfei had died under Yixing's hands, Chou Buhong didn't relax his tactics. Instead, he remained vigilant, attaching great importance to this battle. In this spear strike, Chou Buhong had used at least 80% of his strength. Let alone a half-step true master, even a 1-star true master would be frightened out of their wits by this spear strike. But Yixing was not an ordinary half-step true master, nor was he someone a 1-star true master could compare with. In particular, speed. In this aspect, any early true master could forget about gaining an advantage in front of Yixing. Dark Spirit Spear Art. The black dragon spear in Yixing's hands moved. In an instant, a dark spear light shot out. He used the Dark Spirit Spear Art and thrust out his spear. Chou Buhong's spear was fast, but Yixing's spear was even faster. The two spirit spears were like two needles against each other, their spear points thrusting together. Bang! A terrifying astral collision emitted explosive sounds. In that instant, a mass of energy rapidly spread out in all directions. Yixing and Chou Buhong's bodies shook at the same time. They were sent flying back 100 meters by the impact of this energy before falling to the ground. The medium-grade spirit spear in Chou Buhong's hands buzzed and trembled. As for the black dragon spear in Yixing's hands, it remained motionless, completely silent. One was a medium-grade spirit spear and the other was a high-grade spirit spear. In a collision of equal strength, it was clear which was stronger and which was weaker. The black dragon spear had dissolved the impact of the collision. Yixing's arm hadn't been impacted by the other's strength. But Chou Buhong's arm had been impacted by Yixing's spear, causing his arm to feel numb from the shock. Chou Buhong stared at Yixing. His eyes were filled with shock as he exclaimed. He said, "Half-step true master? This was impossible. You just broke through to 8-star martial sage 10 days ago. In just 10 days, how could you break through again and become a half-step martial sage?" Yixing's eyes were filled with intense killing intent as he said, "Impossible? Whether you believe it or not, the truth is the truth, just like your life. Even if you don't want to believe it, you can't change the fact that you will die today." Chou Buhong's eyes burned with anger as he shouted, "Hiding your cultivation, you must have hidden your cultivation before. No wonder you were able to kill Yun Zhanfei. It turns out that you are a half-step enlightened being, and your strength is not any weaker than a 1-star enlightened being. However, in front of me, Chou Buhong, your strength is not enough." Instantly, Chou Buhong's aura surged. He circulated his astral energy to the limit, wanting to go all out against Yi Xing. Before this, Qiu Buhong thought that 80% of his strength would be enough to kill Yi Xing. However, through the exchange just now, he had already tested out Yi Xing's strength. If he didn't go all out, there was no hope of killing Yi Xing. Facing Qiu Buhong's surging aura, Yi Xing's expression was indifferent as he said, "A 2-star enlightened being is only SOSO. You are much weaker than I thought. Did you think that I went all out just now? I only used 60% of my strength to play with you." Yi Xing's aura also skyrocketed. The grand force of wind, the grand force of fire, and the grand force of darkness, the 3 grand forces of heaven and earth, caused Yi Xing's aura to be even stronger than Qiu Buhong's. Qiu Buhong's pupils shrank, revealing a trace of astonishment. A half-step enlightened being could actually release such a terrifying aura. This was simply more terrifying than most of the 2-star enlightened beings he had met. At this moment, cracks began to appear in Qiu Buhong's confidence in winning. He regretted not notifying the other enlightened beings. If he were alone, it would be difficult for him to swallow up all the treasures on Yi Xing's body. Now, Qiu Buhong wanted to notify the others, but Yi Xing wouldn't give him the time. He shouted, "You also want to try my spear?" Dark Spirit Spear Art, Flash of Light. This spear was the Manifestation Realm Dark Spirit Spear Art. It had reached perfection. With the Minute Wind Force added on, its speed reached the extreme. With the Minute Fire Force and Darkness Force added on, its might was terrifying to the extreme. With a whoosh, a light flashed and the Black Dragon Spear arrived in front of Qiu Buhong. Compared to Qiu Buhong's Gale Spear Art, this spear was much faster and much stronger. As this spear arrived, Qiu Buhong's heart tightened. A cold sweat dripped down his back as he felt a fatal threat. Qiu Buhong's figure was like a bolt of lightning. He drew backwards, the medium-grade spirit spear in his hands thrusting forwards. Bang! 2 spears collided. With a loud explosive sound, energy exploded outwards. Qiu Buhong's body shook and his retreating speed doubled as he shot backwards for over 1,000 meters. As for Yi Xing, he only paused for a moment. He didn't take half a step back. He used the heavenly bat steps and his figure flashed like a bolt of lightning. The Black Dragon Spear erupted with a brilliant dark spear light once more as it thrust towards Qiu Buhong. Dark Spirit Spear. Yi Xing shouted out loud. He used the Dark Spirit Spear Art's ultimate killing move. The dark spear light shot forwards, occupying Qiu Buhong's entire field of vision. The Manifestation Realm Dark Spirit Spear Art contained the rhythm of the Tao. Its moves were like divinity, possessing an unfathomable might. Even if it was a 1-star enlightened being whose cultivation was higher than Yi Xing's, in front of Yi Xing's spear, they still wouldn't have the strength to resist. They would instantly die. Qiu Buhong was a 2-star enlightened being. Beneath the spear, he also felt an intense sense of death. However, the strength of a 2-star enlightened being was far from what a 1-star enlightened being could compare with. In front of this spear, a 1-star enlightened being had no ability to resist. A 2-star enlightened being. Qiu Buhong bit down on the tip of his tongue. The pain caused him to instantly awaken from the illusion of divinity. However, the Black Dragon Spear was already close to his throat. Qiu Buhong didn't have time to use his spear skills to resist. He could only instinctively block with his spear. Clang! The Black Dragon Spear's spear point ruthlessly struck the middle-grade spirit spear shaft, emitting a loud explosive sound. A terrifying strength instantly sent Qiu Buhong flying backwards. Qiu Buhong spat out a mouthful of blood as he shot backwards for over 1,000 meters. Whoosh! As Qiu Buhong was still retreating, a beam of starlight shot out from between his eyebrows, turning into a star surrounded by a hurricane. This was a wind attribute astral image. Its star force surged, and from its intensity, it could be considered a high-grade astral image. Qiu Buhong had used his astral image, but he didn't launch a counterattack against Yi Xing. Instead, he followed the strength of Yi Xing's spear and fled into the distance. Beneath the cover of the Hurricane Astral Image's wind star force, Qiu Buhong's speed doubled. Astral wind turned into wings and he rapidly glided through the air. His speed was at least twice as fast as when he rode the red-tailed eagle. At the same time, Qiu Buhong took out the speed communication bead. Yi Xing's strength was far too formidable, causing him to be frightened out of his wits. As for Yi Xing's treasures, he no longer had the courage to take them all for himself. He had to notify the other enlightened beings so that they could besiege Yi Xing. How could Yi Xing give Qiu Buhong the chance to notify the others? His lips curled up and a pair of blue wings instantly sprouted from his back. These weren't wings condensed from astral essence, but a true flight-type spirit artifact. Moreover, they were a top-grade flight-type spirit artifact, the Azure Cloud Wings. At this time, Yi Xing was striving to stop Qiu Buhong as quickly as possible. Naturally, he had to erupt with his maximum speed. With a flap of the Azure Cloud Wings, Yi Xing instantly turned into a beam of light, vanishing from where he stood. Qiu Buhong's speed was fast enough, nearly reaching the speed of a third-level monster bird. But, compared to Yi Xing's speed when he used the Azure Cloud Wings, he was far too slow. He was at least twice as slow. In the blink of an eye, Yi Xing crossed several miles and appeared behind Qiu Buhong. The black dragon spear in his hands emitted an intense dark spear light that ruthlessly stabbed towards Qiu Buhong's back. Qiu Buhong grasped the medium-grade spirit spear in one hand and the speed communication bead in the other. He had already activated the Azure Cloud Stars to activate the speed communication bead. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly felt a bone-chilling chill from behind him. His heart trembled as he felt the aura of death. At this time, Qiu Buhong didn't have time to speak. He quickly looked behind him and his hair stood on end. He saw that Yi Xing's black dragon spear had already pierced towards his back. Qiu Buhong's astral essence erupted to the limit. His body was covered in a layer of flames and his astral essence was already burning. His speed erupted as he wanted to avoid this spear. But even so, Qiu Buhong's speed was still inferior to Yi Xing's spear. In that instant, an icy chill penetrated his heart. Qiu Buhong didn't feel any pain. But as he looked down, he saw that the spear point had pierced through his chest. Chapter 352. As Qiu Buhong saw the spear point in his chest, he realized that he had been pierced through by this spear. Because this spear was too fast, even though it pierced through Qiu Buhong's body, he didn't feel any pain. It was only at this moment that he saw the spear point pierce through his chest, dripping with blood. Only then did he feel the intense pain that came from his body. Qiu Buhong opened his mouth wide and cried out in fear. But his throat wasn't able to emit any shrill sounds. All he could do was emit a hoarse roar. The black dragon spear had pierced through Qiu Buhong's heart. This was a fatal wound. Qiu Buhong's vitality rapidly faded away and he didn't even have the time to cry out. Blood gushed out from Qiu Buhong's mouth. In just several breaths of time, his head tilted to the side and he died. In the skies, Yi Xing's blue cloud wings spread open behind him. He calmly stood in the void, grasping the black dragon spear and thrusting forwards. The spear point pierced through Qiu Buhong's body, fixing his corpse in the air. Even as Qiu Buhong died, his eyes were filled with regret and unwillingness. When he fought Yi Xing, he didn't lower his guard because he underestimated Yi Xing. But it couldn't be denied that he had underestimated Yi Xing far too much. It was because he underestimated Yi Xing that he thought Yi Xing was only a genius of the younger generation, someone who hadn't stepped into the sage realm yet. It was impossible for him to be a match for a two-star sage like him. Thus, when he saw Yi Xing, he didn't notify anyone. Instead, he wanted to kill Yi Xing and take all the treasures for himself. Ultimately, this had led to his own death. In truth, Yun Zhanfei dying under Yi Xing's hands was a very bad omen. This should have caused Qiu Buhong to place more importance on Yi Xing and avoid a one-on-one battle with Yi Xing as much as possible. Unfortunately, Qiu Buhong was attracted by the treasures and wanted to take all of Yi Xing's treasures for himself. Thus, he made an irrational move and naturally had to bear serious consequences. Yi Xing put away the black dragon spear and Qiu Buhong's corpse fell from the skies. The black dragon spear shook and a cold light flashed on the spear point, leaving not a single drop of blood on it. When Yi Xing landed on the ground, he retracted his azure cloud wings and collected Qiu Buhong's storage ring and mid-grade spirit spear. With a wave of his hand, he burned Cho Buohong into ashes with the star fire. Cho Buohong, you're not the first, and you won't be the last. East Fu Sect, Flying Cloud Sect, Blood Spectre Sect, Divine Wind Sect, and Sun Moon Sect. Just you wait. It won't be long before I uproot all of you. This is the price you have to pay for attacking my Falling Star Sect. Seeing Cho Buohong turn into ashes, Yi Xing said coldly. In the distance, Cho Buohong's red-tailed eagle flapped its wings and flew away. Yi Xing took out the purple firmament bow and the purple gold arrow. With a single shot, the arrow cut through the void for several miles and instantly struck the red-tailed eagle's head, instantly killing it. Yi Xing waved his hand towards the distance. The third-level monster beast, the black-armored iron bull, quickly ran over to the red-tailed eagle's corpse and began to enjoy its meal. Yi Xing continued to practice his martial arts. The Dark Spirit Spear art had already reached the manifestation boundary. What he needed to practice next was the Heavenly Bat Steps and the 4 Divisions arrow art. Wind potential had a great effect on the cultivation of the Heavenly Bat Steps. In addition to the 4th level of Heart Force, it didn't take long for his attainments in the Heavenly Bat Steps to reach the manifestation boundary. With the Heavenly Bat Steps reaching transcendent perfection, Yi Xing was no longer constrained by the situation. Every step he took had a terrifying speed. Speed was his advantage to begin with, and now it had risen to another level. As for the 4 symbols arrow technique, because Yi Xing's heart force was closely related to the art of archery, it was a piece of cake for him to cultivate it. In less than 2 days, he had reached the transformative stage. When one's martial arts reached the manifestation boundary, they were no longer constrained by the moves. Each of their moves contained unpredictable power. Yi Xing's Dark Spirit Spear art, Heavenly Bat Steps, and 4 Divisions arrow art had all reached the manifestation boundary. Compared to when he had just reached the half-step enlightened person, his strength was incomparable. After reaching the manifestation boundary of the 4 Divisions arrow art, Yi Xing continued to practice the upper-tier spiritual martial art, Flame Dipper Fist. As an upper-tier spiritual martial art, the Flame Dipper Fist was much harder to practice than middle-tier spiritual martial arts such as the Dark Spirit Spear art. However, Yi Xing had the help of the Super Brain. His body had already formed the Star Dipper and he also had the 4th level of Heart Force. Thus, he was able to practice the Flame Dipper Fist very quickly. 3 days later, Yi Xing stopped practicing the Flame Dipper Fist. His attainment in the Flame Dipper Fist had far surpassed the small success stage. He was only 1 step away from the greater success stage. However, the greater success stage of the upper-tier spiritual martial art required too much of the Star Dipper. It was not that Yi Xing could not comprehend it, but his cultivation was too low. At the half-step enlightened person level, it was basically impossible for him to break through that last step. Thus, he could only give up for now. As long as Yi Xing's cultivation broke through to the Star Dipper realm, the greater success stage of the Flame Dipper Fist would follow naturally. Yi Xing sat on the ground and took out a big piece of frost python meat from his storage ring. He pierced it with a lower-tier spiritual sword. Then, he waved his hand and ignited the star fire on the ground. He placed the frost python meat on top of the star fire and started to roast it. In the past few days, Yi Xing had been practicing martial arts and eating the dry food he had brought with him. Today, after he had finished practicing all the martial arts, Yi Xing's appetite had been aroused. He was preparing to roast some frost python meat for a big meal to reward himself. Yi Xing's star fire was extremely tyrannical. The frost python meat could not come in contact with the star fire directly, or else it would be burned to ashes. It could only be roasted on top of the star fire and let the heat slowly roast it. Not long after, oil dripped from the frost python's meat, emitting an appetizing aroma. The frost python meat was a natural top-grade ingredient. It did not need any seasoning. When roasted, it was already an exceptional delicacy. Soon, the frost python meat was roasted until it was golden and shiny. The aroma assailed the nostrils. Yi Xing was already salivating when he smelled the aroma. Whoosh! Yi Xing waved his hand and put away the star fire. The frost python meat had been completely roasted. Looking at the roasted frost python meat, Yixing's eyes lit up. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva and prepared to enjoy the delicious meal. Smells so good, good food. Yixing was about to eat when a voice suddenly came from behind him. It was mixed with the sound of someone sniffing. Yixing heard the voice and his hair stood on end. He turned his head and saw that a bearded man with long hair and a bare upper body had appeared behind him at some unknown time. This man looked like a barbarian. He had a strong body and was 2 meters tall. His 2 arms were like a normal person's thighs. His muscles bulged like dragons. His entire person was filled with a sense of wildness and power. Whoosh! Yixing instantly shot up. Like a flash of light, he rushed forward several hundred meters. This barbarian-like strong man had actually appeared behind Yixing without making a sound. This made Yixing's hair stand on end. The black-armored iron bull didn't sound a warning. This meant that it didn't notice the barbarian's arrival. This barbaric man was able to evade the black-armored iron bull's vigilance, and was even able to silently appear behind Yixing. If he didn't make a sound, Yixing wouldn't have been able to detect him. This caused Yixing to be extremely shocked and scared. What kind of cultivation did this barbaric man have? If this barbarian had wanted to harm him, he could have launched a sneak attack from behind and killed Yixing in an instant. Yixing turned around and looked at the barbarian from afar. He asked, "Who are you?" The barbarian cracked a smile. "Ah, you don't have to be afraid. I don't have any evil intentions. If I did, you would have been dead before you could even sense my presence." The barbarian spread his hands, indicating that he was talking about something big. Even so, Yixing was still scared. He used his superbrain to scan the barbarian, but he couldn't detect his cultivation. The barbarian saw that Yixing was very vigilant. He said, "I was cultivating in seclusion in the dark canyon, comprehending the power of darkness. I smelled the fragrance of your barbecue. Ha! It's too fragrant. My favorite thing in this life is delicious food. Although I only smelled the fragrance, I can guarantee that the barbecue in your hand must be a peerless delicacy." After saying that, the barbarian realized that he hadn't answered Yixing's question. He said, "I'm He Biao. You can call me He Biao. I want to eat the peerless delicacy in your hand. Of course, I won't eat it for free. I'll use my collection of peerless wine to exchange with you. How about it?" He Biao raised his hand and a dark green bottle appeared in his hand. It was about 3 inches tall. Yixing looked at the dark green bottle and thought, how much wine can such a small bottle hold? He Biao saw Yixing's expression and said, "Don't look down on my wine bottle. Even if it's a house full of wine, it can still hold it all. I'm about to leave the Qingyun region and expand the map to the entire true Xian domain. The 9 great sects and the sects in other regions have a lot of new settings and new characters. Then I have to use the plot to connect these new settings, sects, and characters. It's very troublesome and I'm stuck in a very miserable situation. Moreover, some readers said that the plot isn't good recently. This made me even more flustered. I don't know what to write next. Sweat. Yesterday and today, I've been thinking hard about the plot for the next 2 days. Now, I've finally straightened it out a little. How is it going? When it's done, please verify it. I'll update 1 chapter today. I won't use the previous chapters to make up for the missing chapters. I'll make up for it tomorrow. Adding chapters is adding chapters. Making up for the missing chapters is making up for the missing chapters. Thank you, brothers, for your support. Your support is the motivation for me to work hard. Thank you. Chapter 353. Yixing was shocked. The green wine bottle in He Biao's hand was actually a spatial treasure. Storage rings were the most common type of spatial treasure. The only spatial treasure Yixing had ever seen was a storage ring. However, the storage ring space was not big. A low-grade storage ring space was only 1 meter in length, width, and height. It could not store many things. A mid-grade storage ring was 100 times more precious than a low-grade storage ring. Its space was also 100 times larger. It was about 5 meters in length, width, and height. It could store a large room's worth of things. He Biao said that the green wine bottle in his hand could store a room's worth of wine. A room must have more than one room. The space was probably bigger than a mid-grade storage ring. It was very extraordinary. Of course, Yi Xing's superbrain could not detect He Biao's cultivation. This was enough to prove that he was not an ordinary person. It was normal for him to have extraordinary treasures on him. During the grand tournament of the 10 sects, Yi Xing was able to scan the cultivation base of the 4-5 celestial enlightened masters of the northern 4 sects. It was obvious that He Biao's cultivation base was higher than the northern 4 sects' sect leaders. According to Yi Xing's inference, He Biao was at least a high-level enlightened master. He could be called an esteemed master. In the entire True Shen domain, an esteemed master stood at the pinnacle of the martial arts world. Of course, an esteemed master was Yi Xing's lowest estimation of He Biao. He Biao's cultivation should only be higher. He might even be a venerable. However, Yi Xing obviously did not believe that this savage He Biao in front of him was a venerable. Not to mention in the Qingyun region, even in the entire True Shen domain, venerables were legends. Yi Xing did not believe that he would meet a venerable in the Qingyun mountain range. He Biao did not have any malice towards Yi Xing. This made Yi Xing feel relieved. His expression changed from panic to calmness. Yi Xing tossed the roasted frost python meat over to He Biao and said, "There's no need for Senior to exchange wine for this frost python meat. If Senior insists on exchanging, then why don't you tell me where Dark Gorge is? I want to comprehend the force of darkness as well." Yi Xing heard an important point from He Biao's words. He Biao said that he comprehended the darkness force in the Dark Canyon. Yi Xing's grand force of wind and grand force of fire had long since stepped into the initial stage of force, the advanced stage. This was especially true for the grand momentum of wind, which was already quite a distance away from the realm of intricacy. Only Yi Xing's dark force was still at the first level of force, which was still a bit away from the subtle realm. If Yi Xing could comprehend the dark force to the minute subtlety realm, then the dark spirit spear art as a dark martial art would definitely have a huge increase in power. Yi Xing's strength would also increase by another level. Yi Xing was not someone who liked wine. He naturally wanted to comprehend the power of darkness more than coveting the fine wine in He Biao's hands. He Biao took the frost python meat and put it in front of his nose to smell it, revealing a look of enjoyment. After sniffing a few times, He Biao revealed a very satisfied expression and said, "Good meat, ha! Exceptional meat." While talking, He Biao took out a dagger. With a swoosh, he cut the frost python meat into 2 halves. He Biao threw half of it to Yi Xing and said, "I'll bring you to the Dark Canyon. I'll also give you the fine wine to drink. One person happy is not as good as 2 people happy. Come, let's drink fine wine while eating good meat." Yi Xing took a step forward. Several hundred meters were like a square foot. He arrived in front of He Biao in 1 step and said, "Deference is no substitute for obedience. Many thanks, Senior." He Biao. I'm called He Biao. Within the 4 seas, all are brothers. Meeting is fate. Don't call me Senior, Senior. Let's drink wine together and eat meat together. We're brothers. Just call me He Biao. He Biao was clearly someone who did not care about status and seniority. Otherwise, in the martial arts world, based on cultivation and seniority, he was at least a high-level true master. In front of Yi Xing, he could totally be considered a senior. While talking, He Biao took out a large container. It was a wine cup as white as jade. There were dragons and phoenixes carved on the wine cup. It looked very noble. The white jade wine cup was more than 4 inches tall. It was more than an inch taller than the dark green wine bottle. However, He Biao picked up the dark green wine bottle and poured it into the wine cup, filling it to the brim. It could be seen that the dark green wine bottle was indeed a spatial treasure. The space inside was much larger than the size of the bottle. He Biao handed the wine cup filled with fine wine to Yi Xing and said, "Come, come, come. This is my collection of exceptional wine-drunken immortal wine. It was brewed by a master winemaker over 100 years. Good meat must be accompanied by good wine. What's your name? Let's drink." "I'm Yi Xing." "Many thanks, brother He Biao." Yi Xing took the wine cup. As an earthling, he did not have a strong sense of hierarchy. Since He Biao did not consider himself as a senior, Yi Xing naturally would not insist on being a junior and treat him as an equal. When one was outside, one should eat less of other people's food and drink less of other people's wine. Yi Xing had been in the Star Continent for almost 2 years. He naturally knew this. However, he took the wine cup from He Biao and did not hesitate. Instead, he directly drank a mouthful of wine. With He Biao's strength, if he wanted to harm Yi Xing, he did not need to use underhanded methods like poisoning the wine. He could just do it directly. Yi Xing would not be able to resist at all. Therefore, Yi Xing did not have any suspicions. He drank the wine in a free and easy manner. As the wine entered his mouth, it slid down his stomach. Yi Xing's heart was immediately filled with an extremely comfortable feeling. His mind shook, and in an instant, Yi Xing's perception suddenly increased by a large level. He could clearly sense the movement of the wind, the movement of the grass, and the movement of the insects around him. Yi Xing had only experienced this feeling in the dark world because of the black hole astrology. But now, just by drinking a mouthful of wine, he actually reached such a state. It could be seen that the wine he drank was indeed extraordinary. Yi Xing let out a long breath and praised, "Good wine. This wine actually has such an effect. It's much more precious than my frost python meat." The frost python meat was only delicious. In terms of benefits, it could not be compared to the Xianxia wine. Although the frost python meat was a priceless treasure, this was only relative to foodies who focused on taste. To the vast majority of cultivators, the Xianxia wine had such a miraculous effect and was much more precious than the frost python meat. Even though Yi Xing was also a foodie who liked good food and paid attention to taste, he also thought that the Xianxia wine was more precious than the frost python meat. He Biao also drank a mouthful of the Xianxia wine and then ate a big mouthful of the frost python meat. His eyes suddenly lit up. That feeling was as if his soul had been upgraded. After swallowing the frost python meat, He Biao's expression was still in a state of excitement. After a while, he said, "Good meat, it's really good meat. He Biao, have never eaten such good meat in my life, ha." Yi Xing, you're wrong, very wrong. Although the Xianxia wine is good, compared to this meat, it's a far cry, ha. For He Biao, although the Xianxia wine was precious, he had a lot of it and had drunk a lot of it. It no longer had the effect of increasing his perception like the first time he drank it. Therefore, although the Xianxia wine was good, in He Biao's eyes, it was just a good wine that he could drink at any time. But the frost python meat was different. The first time he ate it, the feeling of eating it was almost like his soul had been upgraded. It was refreshing to the extreme. For a foodie who paid attention to taste, this was simply a priceless treasure. He Biao was a foodie who paid attention to taste. The frost python meat to Yi Xing was like the Xianxia wine to He Biao. It was something that could be eaten at any time. Therefore, they naturally felt that the other's food was better. Yi Xing drank the Xianxia wine while eating the frost python meat. He also felt as if his soul had been upgraded. Compared to just eating the frost python meat, it was indeed much more delicious. Moreover, with He Biao accompanying them, the two of them drank and ate while chatting. They felt incomparably happy, and it was much more refreshing than when they were eating alone. Just as He Biao said, it was better to have two people happy than one person happy. Yi Xing swallowed a piece of frost python meat and drank a mouthful of the Xianxia wine. Then, he burped loudly and said, "Brother He Biao, are you from the 9 great sects?" According to Yi Xing's knowledge, only the 9 great sects of the true Xian domain had high-level star realm masters. 9 great sects? You mean the 9 great sects of the true Xian domain? He Biao, who was eating the frost python meat, was stunned. He immediately reacted and shook his head. "I'm not from the true Xian domain. My sect is the Dark Star sect. It's located in a very distant place. Today, my wife went to the hospital for a checkup. I only have time to write at night, so I can only maintain 2 chapters. The missing chapter will be filled tomorrow. The heavenly arrow god will also welcome its first ban. My brain is getting worse and worse. A few days ago, I decided to go to the hospital today. I had already forgotten about it last night. I sleep late, usually after midnight. I also wake up late in the morning. Today, my wife woke me up at 7 in the morning. I don't even know why I woke up so early. Damn, I was scolded. Thank you brothers for your support. I saw your comments in the book review section. Also, thank you rich readers for your support. In the last few days of this month, I will work hard to explode. Chapter 354. The Dark Star sect was definitely famous in the Star Continent. It was a superpower that could rival the Great Yuan dynasty. However, the Qingyun region was too small compared to the entire Star Continent. Not many people knew about the Dark Star sect even though it was the ruler of the Star Continent. The number of people who knew about it was even fewer. If it was some perfected masters who had ventured outside, they might know about the Dark Star sect. However, Yixing didn't know much about the Star Continent. He didn't even know about the Great Yuan dynasty, so how could he know about the Dark Star sect? Therefore, when Yixing heard about the Dark Star sect, his expression was normal. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well, without any ripples. Yixing drank a mouthful of Zuixian or wine and said, "Since the Dark Star sect is very far from here, why did Brother He Biao come to the Qingyun mountain range to cultivate? I was in the Qingyun region, but I didn't know about the Dark Canyon in the Qingyun mountain range to participate in the Dark Force." He Biao swallowed a piece of frost python meat and said with a smile, "Speaking of which, the Qingyun mountain range and the Dark Star sect are quite close. The founder of the Dark Star sect once walked out of here and later founded the Dark Star sect." Yixing's expression froze and he said, "Your esteemed cult's founding ancestor must be an extremely powerful figure, right? Has there ever been such a strong person in the Azure Cloud mountain range? When did this happen?" He Biao was at least a perfected master. In Yixing's opinion, the sect he came from was at least at the same level as the 9 great sects of the true Xin region, or even higher. The founders of the 9 great sects were at least peak perfected masters, or even legendary honorables. Therefore, it could be inferred that the founder of the Dark Star sect was at least at this level. The Qingyun mountain range was desolate and uninhabited. However, 1,500 years ago, there was a superior 1-star sect in the Qingyun mountain range. Yixing couldn't help but wonder if the founder of the Qingyun mountain range was an expert who walked out of the Qingyun mountain range and founded the Dark Star sect. He Biao said, "The founder of our Dark Star sect is naturally powerful. About 2,000 years ago, our founder walked out of the Green Cloud mountain range. However, he did not stay in the Green Cloud mountain range. Instead, he traveled the world. 100 years later, he established the Dark Star sect. 2,000 years ago, the Azure Cloud sect still existed." Yixing was even more certain that the founder of the Dark Star sect was an expert from the Azure Cloud sect. However, what he did not expect was that the Dark Star sect was a power that could rival the Great Yuan dynasty. It was a 3-star power, far from what the Blue Cloud sect, a 1-star power, could compare with. A powerhouse from the Blue Cloud sect could establish a 3-star sect? This wasn't completely impossible. If this expert was a king-grade genius, after walking out of the Emerald Cloud sect, he would travel the world and eventually become a king who stood at the peak of the entire Star Continent. It would be reasonable for him to establish a 3-star sect. However, this was only a theoretical possibility. For a king-grade genius to appear in a 1-star sect, not to mention 10,000 years, it would be hard to come by even in 100,000 years. Moreover, if an expert from the Emerald Cloud sect stepped onto the peak of the Star Continent, became a king of a generation, and established a 3-star sect, then the Emerald Cloud sect, as the place where he came from, would definitely benefit from it. With the help of a king-grade genius and a 3-star sect, the Emerald Cloud sect could easily become a 2-star sect. However, 1,500 years ago, when the Emerald Cloud sect was destroyed, it was still a 1-star sect. This did not make sense. If Yi Xing knew how powerful the Dark Star sect was, he would definitely deduce that the founder of the Dark Star sect did not come from the Emerald Cloud sect. However, he now thought that the Dark Star sect was a power on the same level as the Emerald Cloud sect. Yi Xing did not get to the bottom of the matter. He believed that the relationship between the Emerald Cloud sect and the Dark Star sect was not shallow. Mentioning the destroyed Emerald Cloud sect was obviously impolite. Yi Xing did not continue to ask He Biao, but He Biao asked Yi Xing, "Which sect are you from? At such a young age, you have the cultivation of a half-step perfected person. Even in the entire star continent, you are considered pretty good. In the true Xian domain, you should be a first-rate genius." Yi Xing's heart trembled. Those who had seen the world were indeed different. He was not even 18 years old and was already a half-step perfected person. This had already far surpassed the younger generation of the Emerald Cloud sect. Even in the entire true Xian domain, there were very few who could be compared to him in the younger generation. Even if they could beat him, they would definitely be over 20 years old. At his age, there was probably no genius in the true Xian domain who could reach the cultivation of a half-step perfected person. However, according to He Biao, among the geniuses in the entire star continent, Yi Xing was only considered pretty good. Of course, He Biao was only talking about cultivation. He was not clear about Yi Xing's strength. In terms of strength, to be able to kill a 2-star perfected person before the age of 18, he was also a first-rate genius in the entire star continent. "I am a disciple of the Falling Star sect." Sigh. When Yi Xing mentioned that, his face suddenly revealed a disappointed expression. He then told He Biao about how the Falling Star sect had been annihilated by the other sections. He Biao sighed and said, "Whether it is a sect or an individual warrior, it is a cycle of life and death. When there is life, there is death. No matter how powerful a warrior or a sect is, there will be a day when it will be annihilated. The world of warriors is so cruel. In order to survive in this world, we can only follow the rules of this world. If someone kills your family, you will kill him. If a sect destroys your sect, you will destroy that sect. Yi Xing, we will drink wine and eat meat together. We are brothers. If you have any difficulties, I can help you. However, you have to take back your dignity. You have to avenge your hatred." Yi Xing nodded and said, "Of course. Brother He Biao, I have already drunk your wine. If you take me to the Dark Canyon, it will be the greatest help to me. In 2 months, the Young Hero Assembly will be held. The reward for first place will be something I need. I have to increase my strength as much as possible to participate in the Young Hero Assembly." He Biao was puzzled. "You are indeed a top genius in the true Xian domain. However, you are still too young. It is not easy to get first place in the Young Hero Assembly. I wish you good luck." After drinking the wine and eating the meat, He Biao stood up and clapped his hands. "Come with me to the Dark Canyon. I hope you can gain something." The Dark Canyon was only a few dozen miles away from the place where Yi Xing practiced martial arts. Yi Xing followed He Biao and soon arrived at the Dark Canyon. This was a canyon that was about 1,000 meters long and dozens of meters wide. Although it was daytime, the canyon was dim and it was difficult to see the bottom. Perhaps this was where the name of the Dark Canyon came from. Yi Xing scanned with his super brain and saw through the darkness of the canyon. He saw the bottom of the canyon, which was about 100 meters deep. The power of darkness in the Dark Canyon is very strong and of a very high level. How much you can comprehend will depend on your perception. You drank the drunken immortal wine for the first time. It should have a great effect on your perception and perception. Before the effect of the wine wears off, it is the best time to comprehend the power of heaven and earth. He Biao stood beside the Dark Canyon and said to Yi Xing. Then he jumped into the Dark Canyon. He Biao's voice came from the bottom of the canyon. "I am going into seclusion to comprehend. Don't disturb me. You can leave whenever you want." He Biao was attracted by the fragrance of the frost python meat. His heart itched and he stopped comprehending. All his previous efforts were wasted. Now that he was full, he was ready to go into seclusion to comprehend. He hoped to comprehend the power of darkness to perfection as soon as possible. Yi Xing also entered the Dark Canyon. He sat cross-legged and sensed the aura of darkness around him. With He Biao beside him, Yixing did not use the black hole astrology. Instead, he relied on his own perception to comprehend. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, soon more than 10 breaths passed. Yixing could not sense the slightest bit of the power of darkness. It was as if this was an ordinary canyon. If He Biao had not brought him here, Yixing would not have known that this was a suitable place to comprehend the power of darkness. However, because of He Biao's example, even if Yixing could not sense the power of darkness, he continued to calm his mind and focus on comprehending the aura around him. Time ticked by. An hour had passed, but Yixing still hadn't sensed the power of darkness. However, Yixing's heart was as calm as still water. He continued to sense it. Since He Biao could comprehend the power of darkness here, there must be something. After nearly 2 hours, Yixing finally gained something. Chapter 355. When Yixing sensed the darkness around him, he felt as if he had entered a world of darkness. Everything around him was pitch black. He couldn't even see his fingers if he stretched them out. This scene was similar to Yixing using the black hole astrology. However, the world of darkness created by the black hole astrology was like Yixing's sense of touch. Yixing could clearly sense everything within a radius of 10 miles in this world of darkness. But now, the world of darkness was like a prison. It sealed off Yixing's vision and senses. Yixing couldn't see or sense anything in the darkness around him. What a terrifying darkness! Yixing was startled. He immediately understood that the reason he couldn't sense the darkness wasn't because there wasn't any in the canyon, but because the darkness in the canyon was too high level. With Yixing's level of comprehension of the darkness, it was very difficult to sense it. In the clear sky area, Yixing's understanding of the force of darkness was absolutely one of the best. Even he found it difficult to sense the force of darkness in the dark canyon. Naturally, other martial artists, even Dao masters of the older generation, wouldn't be able to sense it. Therefore, the martial artists in the clear sky region didn't know that there was a dark canyon in the clear sky mountain range where one could comprehend the darkness. Perhaps someone had come to this canyon before, but to the martial artists in the clear sky region, this was just an ordinary canyon. No one would care about it. Yixing was overjoyed. With his perception, as long as he comprehended the darkness, it was impossible for him to gain nothing. The darkness in the canyon was so high level. It was very likely that he would be able to comprehend the darkness to the minute subtlety realm here. As time passed, Yixing's senses slowly seeped into the surrounding darkness. Yixing's understanding of the dark force had reached an extremely profound level in the first stage. He was not far away from the second stage, which was the hyperfocus realm. This would be of great help to him in comprehending the dark force in the dark canyon. Time passed day by day. Yixing's comprehension of the dark force in the dark canyon increased day by day. Compared to the speed of martial arts cultivation, Yixing's comprehension of the dark force was extremely slow. However, the comprehension of the grand momentum of heaven and earth obviously could not be discussed together with the cultivation of martial arts. The difficulty of the two was on a completely different level. Many true masters below the 7th level of the astral realm could train their upper-class spiritual martial force to the great completion. However, very few could comprehend the heavenly force to the subtle realm. Especially for a special heavenly force like the dark force, it was even more difficult to comprehend. Compared to Yixing's cultivation, Yixing's comprehension of the dark force could be described as advancing at a tremendous pace. 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters. As Yixing's understanding of the force of darkness grew deeper and deeper, Yixing's sensing range in the surrounding world of darkness grew wider and wider. 10 days later, he could sense 5 meters away. 20 days later, he could sense 10 meters away. 25 days later, Yixing's comprehension of the force of darkness finally showed a qualitative improvement. His mind moved, and his entire body emitted a strong qi of darkness. His force of darkness had broken through the small completion and entered the subtle realm. Yi Xing's sensing range in the surrounding world of darkness suddenly increased and extended to 30 meters away. Within 30 meters, the darkness was like Yi Xing's sense of touch. It was clearly sensed by Yi Xing. In the middle of the canyon, He Biao was surprised when he sensed the qi of darkness emitted by Yi Xing. The force of darkness has reached the subtle realm? Good kid, he is only a half-step true master, but he can comprehend the force of darkness to this extent. He is even more monstrous than I expected. Yi Xing's comprehension of the force of darkness was beyond He Biao's expectations. He Biao thought to himself, even in the Dark Star sect, there are only a handful of geniuses who can comprehend the force of darkness to the subtle realm when they are only half-step true masters. Such a monstrous genius is actually hidden in a small place like the Qingyun region. I wonder how strong he is and what his potential is. Could he be a true dragon? He Biao opened his eyes and his eyes lit up. Originally, he wasn't interested in the true Xian region's young hero assembly. However, because of Yi Xing, he was interested. It's still early. I will go and take a look when the young hero assembly begins. He Biao thought to himself and closed his eyes again. He continued to comprehend the force of darkness. His force of darkness was only one step away from perfection. However, this last step was extremely difficult to cross. With my cultivation, the force of darkness has already reached the subtle realm. It is extremely difficult to improve it further. There is only a month left before the young hero assembly. I should be on my way. Yi Xing thought to himself. He did not disturb He Biao and left the dark canyon. From the black-armored Iron Bull's consciousness, Yi Xing found out about the nearby territories of some powerful demonic beasts. About 1,000 miles away, there was a demonic beast equivalent to the 3-star venerable, the silver-winged demonic condor. The silver-winged demonic condor was the descendant of the golden-winged demonic condor king. It was a rank 3 demonic beast. After reaching adulthood, most of the demonic beasts would become early rank 3 demonic beasts. Only a few of them could grow into mid-rank 3 demonic beasts. If its wings turned golden, it would become a golden-winged demonic condor. It could grow into a high-rank 3 demonic beast, equivalent to a high-rank star venerable. As for the golden-winged demonic condor king, it was a rank 4 demonic beast, equivalent to a human honorable. If it was a mid-rank 3 silver-winged demonic condor, Yi Xing would not dare to provoke it. However, this silver-winged demonic condor was an early rank 3 demonic beast. Its strength was equivalent to the 3-star venerable. Under the attack of Yi Xing's eye of clear cloud, it naturally could not withstand it. In just a few dozen breaths of time, it was completely subdued by Yi Xing riding on the silver-winged demonic condor. Yi Xing ordered it to fly towards the star crystal vein. The silver-winged demonic condor's flying speed was slightly faster than the purple flame monarch condor. The distance of several thousand miles was covered in less than half a day. Yi Xing did not enter the star crystal vein. Instead, he observed from afar. Seeing that the star crystal vein was still in the hands of he was relieved. He rode on the silver-winged demonic condor and flew towards the north. That was the direction of the 9 sect alliance's headquarters, 9 Heaven City. On the way, Yi Xing inquired about the news when he passed by a city. More than a month after the 10 sect grand tournament ended, the Clear Sky region had undergone great changes. First, it was the Falling Star sect that was destroyed. This was something that Yi Xing naturally knew. However, half a month after the Falling Star sect was destroyed, the Spirit Moon sect also suffered a calamity. They were annihilated in a single night, and it was said that there were only a few survivors. The martial artist who annihilated the Spirit Moon sect left behind 4 large words on the mountain gate of the Spirit Moon sect. Dayuan invincible, demon star must die. It was said that the annihilation of the Spirit Moon sect was related to the strongest force in the entire star mainland, the Dayuan dynasty. The reason seemed to be related to the Virgo constellation that appeared briefly in the Spirit Moon sect. This was the first time that Yi Xing heard news about the Dayuan dynasty. At the same time, he also remembered the Dayuan dynasty in his heart. This was because the Virgo constellation martial artist that the Dayuan dynasty was looking for, Yi Xing knew that it was none other than Wei Qingxian. Sage Yanyu had told Yixing that Wei Qingxian had caused a great commotion when she broke through to the martial saint realm and awakened her Virgo constellation. She was then taken away by a king on the grounds of safety. It seemed that the king had already predicted this outcome. The Spirit Moon sect would not be able to protect the peerless genius Wei Qingxian. Why would the Deyuan dynasty want to kill Wei Qingxian? Could it be because Wei Qingxian possesses a constellation? If that's the case, then I possess the Sagittarius constellation. Wouldn't that make me a target for the Deyuan dynasty? Yixing thought that if he revealed his Sagittarius constellation, he would probably end up like Wei Qingxian and be listed as a target for the Deyuan dynasty. What he did not know was that in reality, he was the true target of the Deyuan dynasty. He was the demon star that the Deyuan dynasty had mentioned. Sigh, the Falling Star sect and the Spirit Moon sect were annihilated within a month. The world of martial artists is indeed cruel. If one does not have enough strength, one would be in a precarious situation. Yixing was touched, and his desire to become stronger grew even stronger. Other than the annihilation of the Spirit Moon sect, the Flying Cloud sect did not have it easy either. Because of Chou Buohong's death, the Flying Cloud sect came up with another explanation. Yun Zhanfei was dead, but Yixing was not. The Sun Moon sect and the other sects believed this explanation. However, they did not believe it verbally. Under the pressure of the Sun Moon sect and the other sects, the Flying Cloud sect had to compensate a large amount of star crystals and spirit weapons. Under the intervention of the Tian Luo sect, the Sun Moon sect withdrew their hands from the 6 southern sects. The East supporting sect was unable to take down the Falling Star sect's final fortress. The southern part of the Azure Cloud mountain range was temporarily peaceful. However, Yixing knew that this peace would not last for long. When he returned, the Azure Cloud region would be turned upside down. Chapter 356. The silver-winged demonic eagle was flying high up in the sky. Yixing sat on the eagle's back. Since he had nothing to do during the journey, he was comprehending the knowledge of arrays that Venerable Qin Yun had left in his mind to improve his attainment in arrays. Even if it was only flying during the day, the silver-winged demonic eagle could travel close to 100,000 miles in a day. On the second day, Yixing left the Qin Yun region. At night, Yixing would sometimes stay in a hotel in the town to rest. He would ask around for directions to ensure that he was not going the wrong way. Sometimes, he would hide in the wings of the silver-winged demonic eagle and make do for the night. 10 days later, Yixing finally arrived at his destination, Nine Heaven City. Nine Heaven City was the biggest city in the True Xian region. Although the 9 high sects were not located here, the headquarters of the 9 Sect Alliance was located in Nine Heaven City. The 9 Sect Alliance controlled the entire True Xian region. No sect in the True Xian region dared to disobey their orders. Above them, the 9 Sect Alliance obeyed the 2-Star Empire and the 2-Star Empire obeyed the 3-Star Empire. In the Star Continent, there was only one dynasty, and that was the Great Yuan dynasty. In theory, an order from the Great Yuan dynasty could be passed down through the layers, and it was sufficient to command the entire world. Of course, this was only in theory. In reality, there were sects in the Star Mainland that the Great Yuan Empire could not command. For example, the Dark Star sect. If the Dark Star Church didn't listen to the Great Yuan dynasty's orders, there would naturally be other sects that followed suit. However, one thing was for sure, the sects that didn't listen to the Great Yuan dynasty's orders were all hidden forces of the Star Continent. They couldn't openly appear in the world. Even a sect as strong as the Dark Star sect that fought against the Great Yuan Empire could only live in the shadows. They did not dare to reveal their stronghold to the public. Otherwise, they would be destroyed by the Great Yuan Empire. The Dark Star sect's martial artists had to hide their identities when they traveled the world. If they were exposed, they would be killed by the Great Yuan Empire. The 9 high sects of the True Xian region were all open forces that obeyed the Great Yuan Empire's orders. As the headquarters of the 9 Sect Alliance and the biggest city in the True Xian region, Nine Heaven City was extremely majestic. It covered a radius of 1,000 miles and had a population of over 100 million. Yi Xing stood on the back of the silver-winged demonic eagle and looked at Nine Heaven City from the sky. The Nine Heaven City was divided into the inner city and the outer city. The 300 miles radius of the inner city was where the 9 sect alliances' headquarters were located. It was shrouded by a formation, and other than the 9 high sects martial artists, no one else was allowed to fly in the sky. The outer city surrounded the inner city, and the area was much larger. More than 90% of the city's population was in the outer city area, and it was divided into 4 districts: north, south, east, and west. The eastern district was a super big market. There were businesses owned by the various sects of the true mystic domain. There were weapon pavilions, elixir pavilions, array pavilions, and other shops that sold weapons, elixir pavilions, array discs, as well as all kinds of material stores. There were also various markets such as auctions, caged battle arenas, slave markets, and so on. The South District was a place of accommodation and entertainment. There were inns, hotels, restaurants, tea houses, brothels, and other buildings everywhere. The west side of the city was where some of the local sects and sects of the Nine Heavens City were stationed. Needless to say, there were some small sects, and many of them were one-star sects. The stronger ones were even comparable to one-star sects. The North District was the slums. Some of the Nine Heavens City's local residents and wandering martial artists lived in this district. It was a mix of good and bad people. Yi Xing rode on the silver-winged demon eagle and flew directly into the South District. At the center of the South District, there was a 7-story inn that was dozens of meters tall. Yi Xing looked at the entrance of the inn. 7 Treasures Inn. Outside the 7 Treasures Inn, there were a few waiters, and all of them were martial sages. In the Fallen Star Kingdom, martial sages were legends to ordinary martial artists. In most of the cities, there were no martial sages. Even in the county cities, there were very few martial sages. Most of them were ordinary martial artists, and there were even some who had not stepped into the martial Tao. However, in the Nine Heavens City, everyone that Yi Xing saw was at least a Star Vortex Realm martial artist, and all of them were martial sages. In the Nine Heavens City, Star Vortex Realm martial artists were called Star Marquis, and martial sages were the names given to Star Vortex Realm martial artists in the remote Qingyun region. Young hero, do you want to stay or have a meal? This inn provides first-class accommodation and food service. We also have professional demonic beast caregivers to take care of your pet beast. Seeing Yi Xing and the silver-winged demon eagle walking up, one of the waiters outside the 7 Treasures Inn walked out and welcomed Yi Xing. At this time, there were other martial artists who came to the 7 Treasures Inn, and the other waiters also went up to welcome them. If it was in the Fallen Star Kingdom, martial sages would be scared half to death if they saw a grade 3 demonic beast. However, although this waiter took a few more glances at the silver-winged demon eagle, his expression was very calm. It was obvious that he had seen many grade 3 demonic beasts, so it was not strange. Accommodation. Yi Xing nodded to the waiters. The waiters bowed and said, "Young hero, please come in. Your demonic beast, please follow me. I will bring it to the demonic beast area." For the sake of the other guests in the inn, demonic beasts are not allowed in the food and accommodation area. I hope young hero can understand. Yi Xing patted the silver-winged demon eagle and gestured for it to follow the waiters. He walked directly into the 7 Treasures Inn. The first floor of the 7 Treasures Inn was a spacious hall. On both sides of the hall, there were many tables with many martial artists seated. Most of them were Star Vortex Realm Marquises, but most of them were high-level Star Vortex Realm Marquises. Yi Xing booked a superior room at the front desk. There was still about a month before the Young Hero Assembly began, so Yi Xing booked it for a month. The accommodation in the 7 Treasures Inn wasn't cheap. The superior room cost 500 low-grade star crystals a day. In addition to the care of the demonic beast, it cost 600 low-grade star crystals a day. A month would cost 18,000 low-grade star crystals, and the food would be calculated separately. In the Qingyun region, if an ordinary half-step perfected one stayed in the 7 Treasures Inn for a month, their hearts would bleed. However, to Yixing, this was nothing. He had received 300,000 low-grade star crystals as a reward during the 10-sect tournament, and all of them were with him. Moreover, Lu Tianyuan had given him the sect master's gift, which contained a few thousand mid-grade star crystals. Before he left the star crystal mine, Zishan Ho and Gu Tianshang had given Yixing tens of thousands of mid-grade star crystals. 10,000 mid-grade star crystals were equivalent to 1,000,000 low-grade star crystals. Yixing wasn't an ordinary wealthy person. His wealth was equivalent to that of an ordinary sect. Among the astral realm perfected ones, there were only a handful of perfected ones below the 4-star level who were wealthier than him. Esteemed guest, your room is number 707. You are staying in this inn. You can head to the 2nd floor for your meal. The beautiful receptionist at the front desk of the inn said as she received Yixing's low-grade star crystals. Her eyes lit up as she looked at Yixing. Yixing nodded and went up to the 2nd floor. The rooms were from the 3rd floor onward. The 1st and 2nd floors were for dining. However, compared to the 1st floor, the decorations on the 2nd floor were obviously more elegant and luxurious. Moreover, there were many private rooms on the 2nd floor. The tables in the hall on the 1st floor couldn't be compared to them. Yixing wasn't in a hurry to go to room 707. Instead, he sat down by a window on the 2nd floor. He ordered a gourd of good wine and a few good dishes, and started to enjoy them alone. As it was his first time here, Yixing was unfamiliar with the 9-heaven city. There were many guests on the 2nd floor of the inn, and many of them were astral realm perfected ones. Yixing wanted to listen to the news and broaden his horizons. Inns and restaurants had always been places for people of the underworld to chat. If one wanted to listen to news, this place was the best place to go. Yixing condensed his astral energy in his ears, and his hearing was extremely sensitive. As long as he listened carefully, he could hear what the other party was talking about as long as they didn't intentionally lower their voices. After listening carefully for a while, Yixing realized that most of the martial artists in the inn were talking about the Young Hero Assembly. The most relevant thing about the Young Hero Assembly was the younger generation geniuses participating in the Young Hero Assembly. When talking about the younger generation geniuses of the True Shen region, they would definitely talk about the Earth Profound ranking. There are new geniuses in every generation. The new generation will surpass the old. The number of perfected ones in this generation of the True Shen region's younger generation is more than 20. It can be said to be the most in 1,000 years. Last year, there were only 10 perfected ones on the Earth Profound ranking. This year, there were 10 more perfected ones. More than 20 perfected ones appeared on the Earth Profound ranking in the same generation. Such a grand event only happened 1,000 years ago. I heard that other regions are also producing young geniuses. The Great Yuan dynasty allowed the entire continent to hold a competition among the younger generation. They have mobilized the martial Dao fate of the entire continent. Indeed, every 1,000 years, there will be a golden age. The current era is a golden age for the entire star continent. The plot transition is not easy to write. Today, I can only update twice. The plot of the 9-heaven city is unfolding. I will definitely update 3 times tomorrow. Thank you for your support and understanding. Chapter 357. Yixing found out that the 9-sect alliances had gathered the younger generation of the True Shen region for the Young Hero Assembly because of the Great Yuan dynasty's order. Through the discussions of the crowd, Yixing also gained a rough understanding of the star continent. The star continent was extremely vast. Just the land area alone was hard to describe. It was more than 100 million miles. Moreover, the star continent wasn't an entire continent. It was a collective name for the 5 continents, separated by a vast ocean. The 5 continents were called the Middle Sky Continent, East Divine Continent, South Divine Continent, West He Divine Continent, North Tranquil Continent. Among them, the Middle Sky Continent was the largest. Its area was comparable to the other 4 continents combined. It was the most powerful region in the star continent. The ruler of the Star Continent, the Great Yuan Dynasty, was located in the Middle Sky Continent. The Great Yuan Dynasty occupied half of the Middle Sky Continent. Its area was larger than any of the other 4 continents combined. As for the other half of the Middle Sky Continent, it was the territory of the 12 affiliated empires of the Great Yuan Dynasty. These 12 affiliated empires were all upper-rank empires. Any one of them could dominate a region in the other 4 continents. Compared to the Middle Sky Continent, the East Divine Continent was much smaller and more fragmented. Unlike the Middle Sky Continent, which only had 1 dynasty and 12 empires, it was divided into 108 regions and countless countries. The East Divine Continent was divided into 36 major regions and 72 minor regions. Regions with 2-star sects were called major regions. Regions with 1-star sects were called minor regions. The true Xin region was one of the 72 lower regions. Within the region, there were no 2-star sects with honorable realm experts. As for the other 3 regions, no one talked about them in detail. Yi Xing estimated that the situation was similar to the East Divine Continent. A year ago, Yang Gang from the Tiangang sect was the only one on the Earth Profound ranking. He was a 3-star spiritual master, and he was ranked first on the Earth Profound ranking. This year, Meng Ji and Bai Tsang, who were ranked 2nd and 3rd on the Earth Profound ranking, had also broken through to the 3rd level of the Star Realm. I wonder if Yang Gang will be able to keep his first place on the Earth Profound ranking after the Young Hero Assembly. The Boundless Sects Meng Ji and the White Bone Gates Bai Tsang are both disciples of the 9 great sects. After breaking through to the 3rd star Enlightened Master Realm, their strength must have improved greatly. However, Yang Gang is also a disciple of the 9 great sects. He reached the 3rd star Enlightened Master Realm a year earlier than the 2 of them. Keeping the first place on the Earth Profound ranking shouldn't be a problem. Currently, there are only 3 3-star Enlightened Masters on the Earth Profound ranking. Yang Gang, Meng Ji, and Bai Tsang's top 3 positions should be unshakable. However, many new Enlightened Masters have risen this year. I'm afraid that the top 10 positions of the Earth Profound ranking will change quite a bit. In my opinion, the one with the biggest change should be the Earth Fiend sect's genius disciple, Xianxia. He was originally ranked 10th on the Earth Profound ranking. Although the Earth Fiend sect is not one of the 9 superior sects, it is still a first-rate force in the 9 heaven city other than the 9 sect alliances. When Xianxia was a 1-star Enlightened Master, he was already invincible among his peers. He even defeated a 2-star Enlightened Master once. Furthermore, his ranking on the Earth Profound ranking even surpassed the Golden Sword sect's 2-star Enlightened Master disciple, Wuxia. I heard that Xianxia's cultivation has already broken through to the 2nd level of the Astral Realm and became a 2-star Enlightened Master. I wonder how many 2-star Enlightened Masters from the 9 great sects are his match. Is this true? Xianxia broke through to the 2-star Enlightened Master realm? It should be true. Then that's terrifying. Xianxia's battle strength is heaven-defying. I'm afraid that there are very few Enlightened Masters who are his match. I estimate that Xianxia will very likely rush to the 4th place on the Earth Profound ranking. Over the years, the top 10 of the Earth Profound ranking has always been occupied by the disciples of the 9 great sects. The other sects rarely have a genius who can enter the top 10 of the Earth Profound ranking in the past 100 years. When Xianxia was a 1-star Enlightened Master, he was already able to enter the 10th place on the Earth Profound ranking. This is already very impressive. If he rushes to the 4th place, TSK, this should break the record of the Earth Profound ranking in the past 1,000 years. Actually, other than Xianxia, there's another person who is also very frightening. His ability to challenge those of a higher level is even greater than Xianxia's. Furthermore, he's extremely young, not even 20 years old. I know who you're talking about. Is it the genius disciple of the Golden Sword sect, Mu Xiaoyue? Yes, it's Mu Xiaoyue. He's not even 19 years old, but he's already half a step into the Enlightened Master realm. Furthermore, his sword arts have reached perfection. He's comprehended the grand force of metal to the minute realm. He has defeated many one-star enlightened masters and is known as the #1 genius of the True Shen region in the past 1,000 years. His reputation as a genius is even above Xianxia's. His battle prowess is indeed more heaven-defying than Xianxia's. If Mu Xiaoyue breaks through the astral realm and becomes a one-star enlightened master, with his battle prowess, he might be able to defeat a 2-star enlightened master. That's a sure thing. Furthermore, I've received news that Mu Xiaoyue has already broken through the astral realm and become a 1-star enlightened master. His ranking on the Earth Profound ranking should skyrocket and rush into the top 10. He might even trample the few 2-star enlightened masters on the Earth Profound ranking under his feet. Tisk Tsk? A 19-year-old 1-star enlightened master. Looks like Mu Xiaoyue will shine in this young hero assembly. I wonder if he can defeat Shui Yan of the Fire Cloud sect when he's still a 1-star enlightened master. Shui Yan's cultivation is at the peak of the 2nd level of the astral realm and he's ranked 4th on the Earth Profound ranking. Mu Xiaoyue has just broken through to the 1-star enlightened master, while Shui Yan is at the peak of the 2nd level of the astral realm. He's not far from breaking through to the 3-star enlightened master. Shui Yan is the strongest among the younger generation of the 2-star enlightened masters. Mu Xiaoyue's chances of defeating him are not high. If Mu Xiaoyue can really defeat Shui Yan, then he can compete with Xianxia for the new 4th place on the Earth Profound ranking. Yi Xing focused his astral energy into his ears. While he was pondering, he not only heard the reason why the young hero assembly was being held, but he also heard the news of many young geniuses in the True Shen domain. Currently, among the young geniuses in the True Shen domain, the 3-star enlightened masters, Yang Gang, Meng Ji, and Bai Cong, were the strongest. They occupied the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd places on the Earth Profound ranking. Furthermore, Yang Gang was in the Big Dipper sect, Meng Ji was in the Boundless sect, and Bai Cong was in the Whitebone sect. They were the 3 strongest sects in the True Shen domain's 9 high sects. However, the cultivators in the inn were not talking about Yang Gang, Meng Ji, and Bai Cong. Instead, they were talking about Xianxia and Mu Xiaoyue, the 2 geniuses who could fight above their level. Xianxia was a disciple of the Earth Fiend sect. Although the Earth Fiend sect was not one of the 9 high sects, it was a top 1-star medium sect. It was a local force in the 9 heaven city. In the True Shen domain, other than the 9 high sects, the Earth Fiend sect's strength could be said to be one of the best. Although they were both 1-star medium sects, the Azure Cloud region's 4 northern sects, the Tian Luo sect and the Dark Nether sect did not even have a 6 stars enlightened master. The Sun Moon sect and the Blue Thunder sect only had 1 6 stars enlightened master each. As for the Earth Fiend sect, they had as many as 3 6 stars enlightened masters. The Earth Fiend sect's strength was stronger than the 4 1-star medium sects of the Azure Cloud region combined. Xianxia was invincible in the astral realm. He even had the battle record of challenging someone above his level. The sect behind him was also very powerful. Naturally, he was very famous. Moreover, his cultivation had broken through to the 2nd level of the astral realm this year. During the Young Hero Assembly, there would probably be many 2-star enlightened masters who were ranked higher than him on the Earth Profound ranking. Naturally, he would be the talk of the town. However, the most talked about person was not Xianxia, but Mu Xiaoyue of the Golden Sword sect. As the saying went, there was always someone better than you. There was no better genius, only the most talented. Mu Xiaoyue was a monstrous genius of the younger generation who was even more talented than Xianxia. He was known as the #1 genius of the True Shen domain in the past 1,000 years. Before the age of 19, Mu Xiaoyue had already become a half-step enlightened master and had defeated many 1-star enlightened masters. A half-step enlightened master defeating a 1-star enlightened master. This kind of battle record was even more shocking than Xianxia's. Moreover, Mu Xiaoyue was 19 years old and had already broken through to the astral realm to become a 1-star enlightened master. Xianxia had only broken through to the 1-star enlightened master when he was 20 years old. He was now 22.5 years old and had only reached the 2-star Enlightened Master realm. In terms of cultivation, Xianxia was superior to Mu Xiaoyue because of his age. If they were in the same age group, Xianxia would be inferior. As a result, Mu Xiaoyue naturally became the hot topic of the Young Hero Assembly. This Young Hero Assembly was related to the change of the Earth Profound ranking. All the warriors of the True Shen domain wanted to know how Mu Xiaoyue, the #1 genius of the True Shen domain in the past 1,000 years, would shine in the Young Hero Assembly. Chapter 358. Apart from Yang Gang, Meng Ji, and Bai Tsong, who stood in the top 3 of the Earth Profound ranking, as well as Shi Wenin and Mu Xiaoyue, who had heaven-defying battle prowess, Yi Xing had more or less heard some news about the other young geniuses. Yi Xing already knew a lot about the geniuses at the top of the Earth Profound ranking. There was no need to talk about the top 3. Shui Yan, ranked 4th on the Earth Profound ranking, a 2-star Enlightened Master, a disciple of the Fire Cloud sect, one of the 9 great sects. Nan Xinyue, 5th on the Earth Profound ranking, a 2-star Enlightened Master, and a disciple of the Flying Rainbow sect, one of the 9 high sects. Du Feiyun, ranked 6th on the Earth Profound ranking, a 2-star spiritual master, and a disciple of the Flowing Wind sect, one of the 9 great sects. Shi Du, ranked 7th on the Earth Profound ranking, a 2-star spiritual master, and a disciple of the Spirit Snake sect, one of the 9 great sects. Mu Xiaoyue was one of the most dazzling geniuses of the younger generation. All of the martial artists on the 2nd floor of the inn gradually shifted the topic of discussion to Mu Xiaoyue. There were endless debates about whether Mu Xiaoyue could defeat Shui Yan, who was currently ranked 4th on the Earth Profound ranking. Shui Yan is definitely no match for Mu Xiaoyue. A youth with a sword on his back fiercely slammed his fist on the table. His expression was somewhat excited as he said, Mu Xiaoyue is a monstrous genius of the True Shen region that hasn't appeared in 1,000 years. His swordsmanship has reached perfection. Now that his cultivation has broken through to the astral realm, who among the 2-star Enlightened Masters can match him? How could Shui Yan have the qualifications to be his opponent? If the two of them were to fight, Mu Xiaoyue would definitely be able to defeat him with a single strike. Mu Xiaoyue was a sword Dao powerhouse, and so was this young man with a sword on his back. It was obvious that he worshipped Mu Xiaoyue very much. When he heard some people say that Mu Xiaoyue was inferior to Shui Yan, he became excited. The Fire Cloud sect was ranked 4th among the 9 high sections. It was only inferior to the Heavenly Dipper sect, Boundless sect, and Whitebone sect. As a genius disciple of the Fire Cloud sect, Shui Yan naturally had no lack of warriors fawning over him. The sword-bearing youth had said that Mu Xiaoyue could defeat Shui Yan with a single sword strike, which made many people dissatisfied. A middle-aged man at the 1st level of the astral realm said, "What does a brat know? He only knows blind worship." Mu Xiaoyue is indeed powerful. When he breaks through to the astral realm, he can defeat many 2-stars Enlightened Masters. However, young Master Shui Yan is only 1 step away from breaking through to the 3rd-star Enlightened Master. He is the strongest 2-stars Enlightened Master. Mu Xiaoyue is definitely not a match for young Master Shui Yan. This middle-aged man was a rogue cultivator who did not belong to any sect. He had worked as a waiter in the 9 Heaven City and received benefits from the Fire Cloud sect. Later on, he broke through to the astral realm and became a perfected person by chance. He then became a guest elder of a small sect in the 9 Heaven City. Among the martial sages in the 9 Heaven City, he could be considered a legendary figure. There were many ordinary people in the 9 Heaven City who didn't belong to any sect. They relied on their own efforts and luck to make a name for themselves. Some of them became high-level star marquises, some became half-step Enlightened Masters, and some even became Enlightened Masters with a lifespan of 200 years. Countless ordinary martial sages in the 9 Heaven City treated the achievements of these rogue Enlightened Masters as their lifelong goal. However, although this 1-star Enlightened Master was a legendary figure among the rogue martial sages in the 9 Heaven City, He was nothing compared to the cultivators in the world of sections. The Fire Cloud sect and the Golden Sword sect were existences that he looked up to. However, he had received benefits from the Fire Cloud sect in the past, so his words naturally sided with the Fire Cloud sect. At the same time, he did not smear Mu Xiaoyue's name. He was sure that Mu Xiaoyue was a genius, but he did not think that Mu Xiaoyue could defeat Shui Yan. That's right. Shui Yan is at the peak of the second level of the astral realm. Although Mu Xiaoyue is powerful, he has just broken through to the astral realm. He shouldn't be a match for Shui Yan. On the second floor of the inn, many cultivators were saying this. They believed that Mu Xiaoyue was powerful, but they did not believe that Mu Xiaoyue was so powerful that he could defeat Shui Yan. When his idol was questioned, the young man became even more agitated. His face turned red. The young man stood up and said loudly, "I saw with my own eyes that Mu Xiaoyue defeated a 2-star Enlightened Master when he was a half-step Enlightened Master. Now that Mu Xiaoyue has broken through to the astral realm, even Xianxia is no match for Mu Xiaoyue, let alone Shui Yan. This is getting more and more ridiculous. A half-step Enlightened Master defeated a 2-star Enlightened Master? Ha! Young man, you must be joking. You mean that Mu Xiaoyue has broken through to the astral realm and can fight with a 3-star Enlightened Master? What nonsense! Young man, you're way too stupid. You're daydreaming right now." The young man's words did not gain the approval of the cultivators. Many of them roared with laughter. There were even some martial artists who had remained neutral in the debate between Mu Xiaoyue and Shui Yan, but at this moment, all of them were laughing at the sword-bearing youth. A half-step Enlightened Master defeated a 2-star Enlightened Master? What a joke! None of the cultivators believed the young man's words. They all thought that he was bragging. But there was one exception. Yi Xing's eyes lit up as he looked at the young man. Others might not believe that a half-step Enlightened Master could defeat a 2-star Enlightened Master, but he did. If what the young man said was true, then Mu Xiaoyue's strength should be much stronger than what everyone thought. If a half-step Enlightened Master could defeat a 2-star Enlightened Master, then it was entirely possible for a 1-star Enlightened Master to defeat a 3-star Enlightened Master after breaking through to the astral realm. In Yi Xing's heart, Mu Xiaoyue was an opponent on the same level as Yang Gang, Meng Ji, and Baizong. In this young hero assembly, Yi Xing's goal was to obtain the resurrection elixir as the reward for first place. Naturally, he wanted to compete with the strongest young geniuses in the true Xian domain. Yi Xing knew very well which of the younger generation were the most powerful geniuses in the true Xian region. Who is boasting shamelessly and insulting my senior brother Shui Yan? Just as the cultivators were mocking the young man, a woman's voice came from the stairs. Following the voice was a scorching aura. The voice was extremely angry. All the cultivators on the second floor of the inn looked towards the stairs. If the person addressed Shui Yan as senior brother, then she was definitely a disciple of the Fire Cloud sect. A disciple of one of the 9 high sects that could travel outside was no ordinary person. Some of the cultivators glanced at the young man. The person who came was a disciple of the Fire Cloud sect. With an angry voice, the young man was probably going to suffer. Don't. Footsteps were heard. A few seconds later, 2 beautiful women walked up to the second floor. The eyes of the cultivators on the second floor lit up. The woman walking in front was wearing a fiery red short skirt. She looked to be in her early 20s, and her 2 slender white legs were exposed. The woman behind her was wearing tight black clothes with a few black spiders embroidered on it. She looked to be a few years older, but her figure was even hotter. The exquisite curves of her body were perfectly outlined, especially the clothes that covered her chest. There was a palm-sized tear in it, and her towering breasts pushed the tear open, revealing 2 snow-white hemispheres. The 2 beautiful women were at the first level of the astral realm. The woman in the short skirt in front had a terrifying aura that emitted a scorching aura. The person who spoke was obviously her. It's her, the other genius disciple of the Fire Cloud sect, Yan Lin. She is ranked 13th on the Earth Profound ranking and is also an incredible genius. She is also one of the participants of this young hero assembly. In the inn, someone recognized the woman in the fiery red short skirt and exclaimed softly. As for the woman in black with her chest exposed, more people recognized her, the Black Widow of the Earth Fiend sect. She is a vicious woman. Although she is over 25 years old and has stepped down from the Earth Profound ranking, she was once ranked in the top 20 of the Earth Profound ranking. The Fire Cloud sect disciple, Yen Lin, glanced sharply at the cultivators on the second floor and said, "Who is the one who insulted my senior brother Shui Yen? Stand out." All the cultivators looked at the young man with a sword on his back. Some were gloating, and some were sighing. The young man with a sword on his back walked out and said, "I was the one who said it, but I did not insult Shui Yen. I was telling the truth. When Mu Xiaoyue was a half-step enlightened being, he really defeated a 2-star enlightened being. I saw it with my own eyes. Shui Yen he really is not Mu Xiaoyue's opponent." The young man with a sword on his back stuttered. His forehead was covered in sweat. Obviously, under the pressure of Yen Lin's powerful aura, the young man with a sword on his back was nervous. Yen Lin stared at the young man with a sword on his back. She squinted her eyes and revealed a terrifying aura. "Where are you from? Which sect?" You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.